My parents laughed when I cried in pain of brain cancer. So Grandma cut them from her will. 2 years later, they came begging for forgiveness. Hi there everybody, Patrick is my name. I am currently 32 years old and employed as a sales director for a Chicago-based furniture firm. I currently live in a 3-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Park, a peaceful neighborhood with tree-lined streets, with my wife Emma and our 9-month-old daughter, Ingrid. We spend our evenings with Ingrid and concentrate on our business during the week. On weekends, when work isn't too busy, our small family usually makes the trip to see Grandma Carol. About 30 minutes away from us, she resides in a comfortable home in Oak Park. When Grandma holds Ingrid in her arms and sings old lullabies quietly, it always makes me feel at ease. Right now, our lives are genuinely serene and tranquil. And I cherish every second I spend with my closest loved ones. Since I nearly lost everything just 2 years ago. My life wasn't the only thing at risk at that pivotal moment. It also revealed my family members' actual selves. Following that, my sister Katie, my parents and I lost any sense of connection and became strangers while having the same blood. Throughout it all, I came to understand that a true family is not defined by DNA. It is characterized by the people who support you during your most trying times. A little more than 2 years ago, in May 2023, the incident that altered my life took place. Emma and I had only been married for 3 months at that point. We were still in the honeymoon stage of our marriage, where every day was full of laughing and future dreams, even after dating for almost 5 years and being completely in love. After getting married in a little church outside of Chicago in the spring, we began to dream of starting a family. Emma would talk about how she wanted to decorate the nursery, and I would imagine myself in Lincoln Park, teaching our children how to ride a bike. We had even begun setting away finances for children that never existed to attend college. Then suddenly, a storm struck. All of our lovely plans were swept away in a single, tragic instant. It was a May Saturday. Emma and I were watching The Godfather together on the couch. Suddenly, like a bullet, a sharp, severe ache pierced my brain. As soon as I cried, I began to convulse uncontrollably. I saw Emma's frightened face just before everything turned black. Something was shouting from her mouth, but I couldn't hear it. After that, everything turned dark. I had to squint when I opened my eyes due to the hospital's glaring bright lights. It felt like someone was hammering inside my skull. I became aware that I was lying in a hospital room with medical equipment all about me as I looked around. Emma was sitting on a chair next to my bed, her eyes puffy and red from sobbing. She seized my hand as soon as she realized I was conscious and uttered my name in a shaky voice. "You're awake, Patrick. God be praised." When I asked her to explain what had happened a short while later, she simply shook her head and sobbed even more. She finally broke the quiet when I persisted. Emotion suffocated her voice. "Patrick, you have severe brain cancer." My ears began to ring as soon as Emma pronounced those words. The surroundings became hazy and seemed far away. What I was hearing was unbelievable. Aggressive brain cancer in a person aged 30. It meant I wouldn't have much time left to love Emma, pursue my goals, and lead the life I had just begun to construct while life was only getting begun. I cried like a child for the first time in my life as I lay there in that special care unit. If I disappeared, I pondered what would happen to Emma. I reflected about my aspirations and desires that might never materialize. However, confronting death head-on was the most horrifying aspect. I never thought it would happen so quickly. The door to my hospital room opened as I was still engulfed in gloomy thoughts, and a man in his early 50s named Dr. Peterson entered with a large pile of medical records. He turned to me and spoke in a steady, calm voice after examining the readings on the machines surrounding me. "I'm going to be honest with you, Patrick. If you consent to our experimental treatment program, you can still live." At those remarks, a glimmer of hope appeared in my eyes, but Dr. Peterson went on before I could allow myself to feel relief. "But even for the first round of treatment, the price is high. $1,350. Because it is still in the experimental stage, insurance companies will not cover it." Emma's voice was tremulous as soon as that giant figure was out of his mouth. "Is there anything else we can do if we don't have the entire $350,000? Dr. Peterson hesitated, clearly uneasy. We were silent for a few seconds before he gave us a direct response. "Palliative care is all we could provide. As a result, Patrick would be kept as comfortable as possible, but his time will be limited. He has no more than 3 months to live, according to current estimations." When I heard 3 months ago, I felt a new wave of anxiety sweep over me. The fact that death occurs isn't the most terrifying aspect of it. It's anticipating when it will occur. Following Doctor, the room was silent as Peterson exited. Emma's sobbing next to me and the heart monitor's constant beeping were all that was left. I suddenly knew that $350,000 was the number that now determined my survival. A life or death figure that is overwhelming. That night, none of us was able to get any sleep at all. Faint, moving patterns were produced on the white walls by the hallway light that filtered through the crevice beneath the hospital door. Emma was sitting next to my bed, gazing up at the ceiling as though she was looking for answers. She spoke abruptly and resolutely in the midst of the silence. "Sell the apartment, please. I've already calculated it. We've saved up another $150,000. If we sell the property, we could receive at least an additional $500,000. For your treatment, that would be more than sufficient." I sighed and gave a small shake of my head. I remained silent in answer. Emma finally fell asleep at 11 p.m., due to sheer tiredness. My mind was racing with contradicting ideas as I lay awake in the dark. I kept wondering if it was worth it to continue the treatment. $350,000 is a huge sum of money. During those calm times, I had a selfish idea. Perhaps it would have been preferable to use that money for Emma's future. Perhaps she could utilize it to start over and rediscover happiness. She wouldn't have a place to live if we sold the apartment, only memories and medical debt. Emma woke up abruptly around midnight, as though she had been shaken. I was still awake when she turned to look at me, asking, "What's wrong?" I hesitated for a few seconds before answering in a hoarse voice, "Why aren't you sleeping?" Emma sat up straight and her eyes widened in fear when she heard the words. "I've decided not to go through with the treatment." She yelled out in desperation and started to sob. "I'll be dead before you if you quit treatment." It broke me to bits to see the lady I loved sob like that. I came to the realization that love sometimes necessitates fighting, even when the chances are slim. I realized I had just made the most important decision of my life. One that could alter our lives in ways we could never have imagined. So I nodded and said to her in a whisper, "All right. I'll do the treatment. We'll go through this together." Dr. Peterson allowed us to leave the hospital for a short time the following morning, but not before issuing a strong warning. "Patrick, you must return right away if you have any strange symptoms, including seizures, nausea, or excruciating headaches. Time is of the essence." I knew I was walking a tightrope every day after hearing those words, and it sent a shiver down my spine. Back at the flat, we started making plans to raise the $350,000 we required. I initially called Ryan Williams, my best buddy since college, now working as a real estate agent. There was stillness on the line when I told him everything. Then he spoke in a calm, determined voice. "Don't worry about selling the apartment, Patrick. I will handle everything. You won't be charged a commission by me." I felt a sudden warmth when Ryan said it to me. Having a friend like him was perhaps the best thing I've ever done. However, what followed astounded me even more. Ryan deposited $50,000 into my account very far away. It was an interest-free loan, he said. I could reimburse him once I was well. I said to Ryan, "Aren't you afraid you'll never get the money back? I could die at any time." He responded right away in a firm voice. "Emma and you have my faith. You're the best man I know, Patrick." My chest was constricted with emotion when I hung up the phone. I at last realized what true friendship meant at my saddest period. Emma didn't waste time at all. She informed her folks about my illness over the phone in Milwaukee. With the speaker on, I could hear her mother sobbing on the other end of the line. "Don't worry, sweetheart," Emma's parents told her once she calmed down. Even Emma's younger sister Grace, who had just graduated and begun working a few months prior, called us in a tremulous voice and said, "Emma, I just emptied my savings. We're going to assist Patrick. We'll lend you $100,000. I have $15,000. Please take it to help Patrick." Grace was a young woman just starting out in life, and seeing her say that made Emma and I cry uncontrollably. Nevertheless, she was prepared to donate everything she owned in order to support her brother-in-law, whom she had only known for a few years. After calculating our financial situation, we had $315,000, but we were still short of $35,000. At that point, I thought of my parents, who had recently sold a plot of land in the Chicago suburbs for $320,000, and hoped they would still have the funds and be willing to assist me during this dire situation. I grabbed Emma's hand without hesitation and said, "Let's head to my parents' house. They'll assist us." Emma nodded and hurried over to join me as we got into the car and drove over, not realizing that what was about to happen would turn out to be one of the most memorable experiences of my life. I arrived at my parents' house around 5 p.m. As I pulled up to the curb, I noticed Katie's red car was parked in front. That was a clear sign the whole family was home. Emma squeezed my hand tightly as we stepped up the familiar front steps. She knew my relationship with my family had never been easy, but at that moment, we needed every bit of help we could get. After a few greetings, I sat down across from them and started explaining everything about the seizure, the diagnosis of aggressive brain cancer, and the fact that I had only 3 months left if I didn't start treatment. As I spoke, I kept thinking my mom, Linda, Steve, and my dad were sitting on the couch watching the news, and Katie was tapping away on her laptop at the dining table. They all turned to look at us, surprised. My dad was the first to speak, and he looked at me sternly and said, "I told you you should have been more active." I was startled that he would bury his face in his hands when he thought of his son running out of time. But their reactions left me speechless. Now you see what occurs when you don't care for your health. His words hit me like a slap across the face. This wasn't the time for blame or judgment. Then my mom shook her head and said in a cold, flat voice, "Don't worry. Medicine has advanced significantly. They'll make it right. You're a man. Be resilient. You're not a child." After a quick look up, Katie replied coldly, "You still have 3 months left. Simply use your time, however you see fit." I felt as though the earth had been torn from under me by their icy, uncaring answers. I was standing there among blood relatives who didn't seem to care if I lived or died. I immediately stood up and grabbed Emma's hand to escape, but she softly drew me back and said in a whisper, "We need them." I hesitated for a few seconds and struggled with myself, but then I took a big breath, turned to face my dad and said, "I'm only $35,000 short of what I need for treatment. Mom and you could help me with that." The moment I mentioned borrowing money, all three of their expressions shifted. They looked at each other with uncomfortable, almost irritated glances. No one said a word. The room went quiet, so quiet it felt suffocating. About a minute passed before my dad finally spoke, his voice hard and unyielding. "We don't have the money." "Didn't you just sell the land outside the city for $320,000? I asked him in shock. My mother jumped in this time, glancing at us and declaring, "That money is for Katie's house. We have already made the deposit. Next week the remainder is due." It was as if someone had stabbed me in the chest when I heard those words. The golden child, Katie, came first once more. They have always made every choice with her in mind. And now, they still choose her, even though I was looking death in the face. Emma intervened when she saw the destruction on my face and begged, "Please give it to us for a week." My dad looked at me for a few seconds and then shook his head firmly, so I knew I had one final card to play. "When you need it, we'll pay it back right away. We're borrowing from other people. We'll have the money soon. Patrick needs treatment as soon as possible." "Let's borrow it with interest if you won't lend it for free," I murmured, glancing at him. He simply shook his head and said icily, "If you die, who should I get the money from?" "I'll pay you whatever the bank charges." That cruel question lit a fire in me. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I exploded. "Dad, I'm your kid." Emma was shaking next to me when he yelled back, emotionless, "I don't invest in someone who's already dying." The room fell silent, tense enough to choke. Katie then said, in her typical cold tone, "Don't you two still have an apartment?" "We're already putting it on the market, but it takes time," I said, trying to remain composed. I felt my blood boil when Katie said, "If you're willing to put it up as collateral for a $35,000 loan, then I'll lend you the money." After a few seconds, Katie smiled coldly and said, "If you're willing to put it up as collateral for a $35,000 loan, then I'll lend you the money." Our apartment was worth over $500,000, and she wanted to take it as collateral for just $35,000 to take advantage of me in my time of greatest need. When Emma saw my condition, she hurried to help me up and said firmly, "We're leaving." Before leaving, she turned back, locked eyes with the three of them, and said in a voice like ice, "Don't forget what you did to Patrick today." The anger and stress caused a blinding headache, forcing me to sit down and grip my skull as if 1,000 needles were sticking into my brain. "You'll pay for it one day." As my condition worsened, Emma escorted me out of the place I used to call home and drove directly to the hospital. How had I survived all these years in a family where love had always been measured in dollars? I asked myself as I sat in the passenger seat. I was unable to get any sleep at all that night while I was lying in my hospital room. Emma had fallen asleep next to me from sheer exhaustion, but I lay there restless, my mind racing with 1,000 questions, wondering why I was treated that way, why Katie was always given priority, and why, even in a situation where it was life or death, those questions kept coming back to me, keeping me awake. I began thinking about my early years, when I used to play with hand-me-downs while Katie always had the newest toys. She attended a private school with piano lessons, ballet classes, tennis programs, you name it, while I attended a public school and was denied access to extracurricular activities. Her birthdays were lavish celebrations with cakes and large groups of friends, while mine were simply quiet family dinners. By the time we got to college, the imbalance became impossible to ignore. My parents paid Katie's full tuition and living expenses. I had to earn a scholarship and work 3 jobs to afford tuition and rent. After graduation, I built my life from scratch, bought my car, bought my own home, built a career with nothing but grit and hard work. All of my accomplishments were the result of my sacrifice and sweat. In the meantime, Katie received financial support at every turn, from her first car to her failed business venture. My parents were always there to support her when she fell, and they continued to do so even as I was dying. The bitter realization that despite everything I had done for them over the years, they still turned their backs on me was more painful than their coldness that day. I recalled how, in 2020, Katie was unemployed for 8 months after the marketing firm she worked for failed, and I was saving to buy our apartment at the time. However, I didn't hesitate when my parents told me about their predicament. I sent Katie $2,000 to help her get by. I paid the $3,000 bill to have my parents' roof repaired after a storm damaged it in 2018. I gave my dad $5,000 toward a new car in 2022 when he wanted to replace his beat-up Honda Accord that had accumulated over 200,000 miles. And in October of that same year, my mom was hospitalized for 2 weeks due to kidney stones. I never mentioned that it was a loan, I never asked for anything in return, I just contributed because that's what family is supposed to do, and I sent her $1,000 to help with the hospital bills, and that doesn't even include the many little moments, holidays, birthdays, and unforeseen situations. I gave freely and without expecting anything in return. But Katie did nothing but take. She never gave anyone anything. She was like a money vacuum, always ready with an excuse to ask for help from me or our parents, but they always picked her first. Katie was the first to be considered in every big decision. Even though I only had 3 months to live, they still chose her in the face of my death, helping her purchase a home, rather than supporting their son in his battle for survival. In that moment of intense rage and heartbreak, the idea that I might not even be their biological son struck me so strongly that I nearly wanted to have a DNA test to find out the truth. I promised myself that I would do whatever it took to get through this. The following morning, at around 9 a.m., Dr. Peterson had just finished checking my vitals and left the room after looking at Emma, who was still sleeping next to me with tear streaks dried on her cheeks. A few seconds later, the door opened again, and I assumed the doctor had forgotten something and was returning, but I was shocked to see Grandma Carol, who was 78 at the time, with her white hair pulled back neatly, and her eyes still bright and alive. At a time when I felt like the world had abandoned me, my grandmother, the one person I knew would never leave me, appeared out of nowhere, wearing her well-known navy blue knit cardigan and the polished black Oxfords she always liked. She wasted no time in asking how I was feeling. "This is $35,000. She remarked calmly but resolutely, looking directly into Emma's eyes as she strode firmly toward Emma and me, taking out 4 thick stacks of $100 bills from her ancient leather handbag, neatly packed and tied securely. Proceed to cover Patrick's medical expenses." Grandma sat down on the plastic chair beside my hospital bed after Emma hurriedly got up, her hands shaking as she accepted the money, bowed her head in appreciation, thanked Grandma, and hurried out of the room to make the payment, leaving me alone with the woman who had just changed everything. After a few moments of silence, I asked her, "Curious, Grandma, did Emma call you?" That old reassuring touch almost made me cry as she stroked her hand through my hair just like she used to do when I was a child. "Emma contacted me last night. I know everything and don't blame her. I warned her long ago that if something terrible ever happened, she should call me right away." She gave me a tender, loving look and responded. When she said that, I felt so grateful for Emma because she knew exactly what to do when it seemed like there was no hope left. Grandma was always there for us when we needed her most. In the hospital room, Grandma asked me about my condition and the treatment plan, and she reminded me to fight with all of my strength to overcome this illness. Before she left, she turned to me and said, "Don't sell the apartment. Don't lose it." She didn't give me a lengthy explanation, but instead looked directly into my eyes and said, "Focus on getting better." Her request caught me off guard, and I looked at her in surprise and said, "If I don't sell the apartment, I won't have enough money to pay everyone back. I'll take care of the cash." My grandma, who had always been rigorous and no nonsense, had just given me a promise, and if there's one thing I've learned about her, it's that when she made a commitment, she would never betray it. At that moment, a flood of hope and deep thankfulness swept over me. I contacted Ryan right away after she left and told him to wait to sell the apartment. I've made the decision not to proceed. I finally felt like I wasn't battling alone after everything that had transpired. Grandma Carol's unwavering devotion was now a strong ally in my fight against the illness. I was admitted to the experimental therapy program right away once I received the $350,000 advance payment. I watched bags of chemotherapy medication slowly seep into my veins as I lay in the hospital bed on the first day of treatment. I had the impression that I was risking everything on a shaky hope. The initial days were absolutely terrible. The experimental chemotherapy was twice as strong as the usual amount, and I felt so sick that I was unable to eat. My weight decreased from 165 pounds to just 132 pounds, and my hair fell out in big clumps. My entire body shook on several nights when I had a high temperature. Emma spent not a single day outside of the hospital. She tenderly wiped the cold perspiration from my forehead while she stayed up all night when I was in anguish. In moments when I felt hopeless and wanted to give up, Emma would grasp my hand tightly and whisper, "You have to fight. I need you to stay with me." It was Emma's words that gave me the strength to keep fighting this cancer. In the 4th week of the initial course of treatment, a miracle occurred. Dr. Peterson smiled broadly as he walked into the room for a standard examination. I hadn't seen that since I'd first met him. After reviewing the MRI data, Dr. Peterson informed us, "Patrick, I have good news. The tumor has shrunk by 40% compared to the original size. This result is beyond what we hoped for." Emma became very happy and started crying. As for me, it felt like I had just been granted a second chance at life. I was finally able to glimpse the end of the tunnel after spending so many days in a state of hopelessness. My blood test results revealed a notable decrease in cancer indicators by the 6th week. I was even allowed to take walks outside by Dr. Peterson. A real miracle occurred by the 7th week. The tumor has decreased by 70%, according to the most recent MRI. I knew that my risky choice to participate in the trial had saved my life, and the love and support of those around me had given me the strength to get through my darkest days. Dr. Peterson couldn't contain his excitement as he declared, "Patrick, this is one of the most successful cases I've ever seen with this experimental drug." I formally finished the first cycle of treatment 2 months later, with outcomes that greatly above my expectations. Emma and I expressed our gratitude to everyone who supported us throughout the most trying weeks after we were released from the hospital. In order to see Emma's parents, we took a car to Milwaukee. Emma's parents were ecstatic when they saw me return home looking well and putting on a little weight. Her mother gave me a tight hug and said, "Thank God Patrick's better," in a tremulous voice. They and Emma's younger sister Grace have been coming to see me in the hospital on a regular basis for the past 2 months. They arrived each week with genuine encouragement. I felt very fortunate to have a true family after witnessing their concern. On the other hand, neither my sister Katie nor my parents paid us a single visit. During the entire 2 months of treatment, they never contacted or even sent a single message to check on me. How little or much I meant to them was evident from their silence. Emma later informed me that my grandma was reprimanded by my dad for giving me the $35,000. Grandma Carol said bluntly to them at the time, "It's my money. I'll give it to whoever I want." I laughed, but I was also moved by her statement. I also wanted to express my gratitude to my best friend Ryan, who helped me out when I needed it most. When I brought up paying him back the $50,000, Ryan shook his head and said, "Don't worry about that. Just focus on getting better." His action reminded me once again of the actual value of genuine friendship. We thanked Ryan and then proceeded to see Grandma Carol. When she saw that I was healthy again, her wrinkly face brightened up with delight. She brushed my hair gently and said, "You're strong, Patrick. I'm proud of you." I also contacted Aunt Olivia to express my gratitude for coming to see me in the hospital a few times, despite the fact that she lived in Milwaukee and had to make the long drive. Grandma abruptly urged us to stay that afternoon as we were about to go. Then she grabbed her phone and called Aunt Olivia and my dad, demanding that they see her the following morning. She spoke in a forceful voice over the phone. "I will arrive at my house at 9 a.m. tomorrow. I wish to make amendments to my will." Grandma's abrupt choice caught me off guard, but since I knew how she felt, I dared not challenge it. To assist me recover, Mom prepared a large meal that night that included roasted meat, chicken soup and baked bread. Emma spent about 3 hours with her in the kitchen. They took extra care when preparing the food. The warm, inviting ambiance of Grandma's tiny house made me feel incredibly thankful. My situation might have deteriorated, and I might not even be here today if she hadn't intervened with that $35,000 just when I needed it. After months of anxiety and fear, I finally slept peacefully that night for the first time in a long time. At 9 a.m. the following day, the doorbell kept ringing. As one party after another entered Grandma's tiny home, the living room quickly filled up. My sister Katie and my dad were all taken aback when they noticed me sitting next to Grandma. They had expressionless, icy faces. Not even a hello word. They were still bitter over Grandma giving me the $35,000. And I could sense it. Neither did I intend to greet them. We were strangers in the same room after everything that had transpired. In contrast, Aunt Olivia's family was quite different. "Patrick," she said cheerfully, "I'm so glad to see you getting better. You've got to stay strong for the next 2 rounds of treatment." "Okay," she answered as soon as she saw me, and I thanked her and vowed to keep fighting. Around 9:10, the doorbell rang once more, and a tall man with a leather briefcase and a black suit, likely in his mid-40s, came in. Grandma took him inside and presented him to everyone. "This is my lawyer, Nicholas Parker." Attorney Nicholas nodded courteously to everyone before taking a seat in the chair that Grandma had indicated. Grandma abruptly turned to my father after everyone had taken their seats and said, "Steve, tell me something. Have I ever played favorites between you and Olivia?" Her abrupt remark made my father pause for a few seconds, as he was obviously taken by surprise. Grandma nodded as he finally said, "No, Mom. You've always treated us equally." She then asked another question. "Then why have you given Patrick and Katie preference?" My father's face went white at that point, but he made an effort to remain calm and answered, "I haven't favored anyone. I've always treated both kids fairly." Before he could say anything more, Grandma yelled, "Shut your mouth!" Her voice sounded like a thunderclap throughout the room. There was utter silence. Everyone was afraid to move. "Clearly and deliberately, you left Patrick to die and used all $320,000 to buy Katie a house, and now you have the nerve to deny it," she said after pausing for a few seconds to gather herself. My mother then jumped in to defend my father, but she pointed out that Patrick is a boy, stronger, and capable of taking care of himself. Grandma stared straight at my dad and yelled, "I've been waiting for that exact sentence for a long time." We were all in shock, and no one yet knew what she meant. Grandma's laugh was bitter and frigid, but it was also full of significance. She turned to lawyer Nicholas a few moments later and said, "Nicholas, adjust the will for me. This house will go to Olivia after I pass away." My father froze, then yelled in shock, "Mom, you can't do this." Grandma was now really upset, and she got up and responded firmly and clearly. "Your wife just said Patrick is a stronger boy who can care for himself. Well, I also have 2 children, Steve and Olivia. Steve is a boy. He can take care of himself too." With those comments, I fully realized what Grandma was doing. This was her method of teaching my parents a lesson about fairness. My father didn't dare dispute. After glaring at my mother, he went to face Grandma and begged, "Mom, we were wrong. Please pardon us." But Granny remained unflinching despite their entreaties. "It's done. Take your wife and daughter and leave this house. If you don't, never call me Mom again and I'll call the police," she added forcefully, looking directly at my father. My mother looked to want to quarrel more, but my father indicated for her to stop. He was aware that once Grandma made up her mind, it couldn't be changed. In the end, the 3 of them departed the house in embarrassment and quiet. "Mom, I don't want Steve's share of the estate," Aunt Olivia whispered to Grandma after the sound of their automobile engine subsided. Grandma smiled gently and said, "Patrick already has a different share." She then took a checkbook out of the drawer, scribbled down a number, and gave me the check. "Give it to Patrick instead. This is for your treatment of me. Take it and pay off all your debts." Emma and I were too shocked to talk when I grabbed the check out of her hand. It stated $800,000, an astounding quantity we could never have imagined. As I tried to reject it, stunned by how much it was, Grandma stretched out and said, "Take it. You deserve this." Knowing there was no point fighting with her, we received the present with a thrill that words couldn't adequately explain. We cooked together and had a heartfelt supper with Aunt Olivia's family that day, who were the ones who made us feel like family. I came to the realization that family isn't based on blood amid the warmth of that evening, it's decided by the people who decide to always be there for you. I promptly repaid all of the money I had borrowed from my in-laws, sister-in-law Grace, and best buddy Ryan after getting the $800,000 from Grandma. I offered to give them some interest as a token of appreciation for their assistance, but they all flatly refused. It was never a loan, Emma's parents made plain. "She lent me the money out of love, not as a business deal," Grace added, laughing. Even the $5,000 in interest I had computed was rejected by Ryan, who insisted that friendship has not a monetary value. Their deeds made me aware of a profound reality. A person is not considered family just because they share blood or DNA. The folks that support you throughout your darkest moments without expecting anything in return are your true family. I felt more certain that I could pay for the final 2 rounds of treatment with the money my grandmother handed me. However, the happiness was short-lived. There was trouble not far behind. My father unintentionally learned about the substantial amount my grandmother had given me during a dispute with Aunt Olivia regarding the house's legacy. Aunt Olivia contacted me that same day and gave me the entire tale while sounding apologetic. She had been called by my father to relinquish her claim to the house. Additionally, she had yelled at him in the heat of the moment and unintentionally revealed the $800,000. She apologized over the phone as soon as she realized her error and advised me to exercise caution. 2 days later, during my second round of treatment, my parents and Katie arrived at the hospital, just as she had prophesied. They insisted that I divide the money equally among the family, claiming that since it was from Grandma, everyone was entitled to it. Seeing how agitated I grew, Emma immediately called hospital security to have them removed. She didn't stop there though. On my behalf, she also submitted a restraining order application. After we presented the complete narrative, from their reluctance to aid when I was on the brink of death to their harassment during treatment, the court authorized our motion. For the remainder of my life, I was legally barred from communication with my parents and sister, Katie. I felt as though a burden had finally been removed off my shoulders on the day I received the court's formal documentation. I was free of those who claimed to be my family but had only ever caused me suffering. After I finished my last course of treatment 3 months later, Doctor, I had never heard better news in my life than what Peterson gave me. I had no cancer whatsoever. Grandma honored the occasion by throwing a little celebration at her house after learning the news. She made a cake with the words, "Welcome back to life, Patrick," inscribed across the top and used yellow streamers, the color of hope, to decorate the living room. I invited Aunt Olivia and her family, Ryan and Emma's family, to come. I was overcome with emotion when I saw everyone who had supported me during my worst moments assembled in that tiny space. I talked in a stifled voice while standing alongside my loved ones. I am aware that words of appreciation will never adequately convey how grateful I am. I have the opportunity to continue living and to return to the people I love because of all of you. Warmth, laughing, light-hearted stories, and the joyful shine in everyone's eyes characterized the celebration that day. Ryan's amusing college tales made us laugh out loud. Grandma sat quietly and watched with a happy grin as Emma's family discussed their future plans. I realized this was the happiest celebration of my life as the evening wore on and the guests started to leave for their homes. I was surrounded by unconditional affection, not because of the cuisine or the decor. Love that money could never purchase. The past 2 years seem to have flown by. With the advent of our adorable 9-month-old daughter Ingrid, our lives are now more tranquil than before. The mood in our flat has completely changed because of her morning laughter, which gives life purpose and happiness. I've grown to value the consistent rhythm of our days. Ingrid sits in her high chair, holding her bottle, and Emma and I eat breakfast every morning at the window that looks out over the park. I always grin when I see her giggle whenever the Chicago sunlight peeks through the maple leaves. While Emma, a self-employed graphic designer, begins her day at home taking care of Ingrid, I say farewell to my wife and daughter after breakfast and go to work. I look forward to spending time with my family in the evenings after a hard day of meetings and sales reports. I take Ingrid in my arms and kiss her forehead first, inhaling the gentle, delightful aroma that only infants possess. In our tiny kitchen, where Emma's laughter melds with the sizzling cookware and Ingrid's chattering from her playchair, we prepare dinner together. We normally wind up watching a movie on the couch at the end of those evenings. I held Ingrid when she fell asleep. On weekends, when work isn't too busy, we frequently take the drive to see Grandma Carol. We eat dinner together and spend time reciting old tales. After the restraining order, I believed I had severed all communication with my parents and Katie. However, the doorbell abruptly rang one weekend afternoon as I was playing with Ingrid in the living room. I was astounded to see all 3 of them standing there as I peered through the peephole. They were ancient and worn as I opened the door. It was Katie who was ill this time. I once fought a terrible brain cancer, and she had it. An unmistakable indication that this illness is genuinely inherited. In spite of all that they had done. Something shook me when I learned that my sister had the same ailment. Katie and my parents fell to their knees before me, apologizing for their errors and pleading for $350,000 to assist with her medical expenses. It was difficult for me to watch them kneel in front of me. They fell silent when I requested them to stand up and then questioned them directly. Have the three of you forgotten what happened 2 years ago when I came to ask for just $35,000? I told them to go and threatened to contact the police if they continued to disturb us, not wanting to prolong the situation. I was still quite saddened as I watched them go into despair. Grandma asked me to look into what had happened, even though I knew I had made the proper choice. Katie and I visited the hospital that same day, when it was confirmed that she was in fact sick. She asked the hospital to let my parents know that she had paid the entire $350,000 for Katie's treatment. I nodded silently as she told me on the drive home. Patrick, you were right to refuse to help them because they once refused to help you. She continued a few seconds later, saying, but Katie is still my granddaughter. I have to help her. I said, thank you for understanding, Grandma. She nodded and smiled, her eyes glowing. Grandma's actions served as a reminder to me once more that true love is capable of forgiving, even in cases where justice has already been done. My father drove to Katie's residence that evening after learning that Grandma had covered the $350,000 cost of her therapy. He pleaded to see her as he stood at the door and kept ringing the bell. He fell on his knees on the front steps as soon as Grandma opened the door, and he murmured in a stifled voice. Grandma Carol showed no emotion at all, but she looked down at her son and kneeled at her feet, saying, thank you, Mom, for saving Katie. I'm sorry. I've been thinking you were unfair to me all this time. After giving him a chilly look for a few moments, she stated, go home, in a stern, unflinching voice. Grandma told me what had happened, and I realized that some things in life cannot be forgiven, no matter how sorry you are. Don't let me see your face again, she said, slamming the door shut. My father was left alone, still kneeling in the darkness of the Chicago night. Grandma showed me that true love is unconditional, even in the face of pain and betrayal, and I was incredibly grateful for her unconditional love after everything she did. I hope Katie will visit her when she gets well, and express her gratitude to the woman who saved her life when the family was no longer able to pay. We often confuse blood family with soul family. Real family isn't defined by shared DNA but by love, sacrifice, and unwavering loyalty. Sometimes strangers become our true family. I'm not sharing this story to place blame or speak poorly of my family. Everyone makes their own decisions and must live with the consequences of those choices. Perhaps this experience will help her understand what true love and sacrifice mean. Life has taught me that true love always comes back to you, and selfishness always has a price. Live in a way that honors the love you're given. That's the end of my story. Even though people who are our blood relatives may feel like strangers, what matters most is identifying and clinging to those who truly love us. Before I go, I want to ask you all a question. If you were my grandmother and Katie was very sick, would you have spent $350,000 to save her the way my grandma did? I would really like to know what you think, so please leave your thoughts in the comments below and remember to subscribe to the channel and enable notifications so that you can follow us in future stories, each of which teaches us a valuable life lesson. My aunt mocked my trade school dreams, then begged me to fix her furnace in a freeze. I sent the meme back with my rates and let the cold answer her. It was my Tuesday. It occurred within the family group chat. You know, the ones with grainy selfies and gifs that haven't been amusing since 2012. And daily uplifting quotes from Aunt Rachel that appear to have come right from Kat's Facebook page. Most days, I mute it and continue scrolling. But this time, Rachel delivered a meme that left me speechless. It was a cartoon image of a bearded man holding a wrench and a crooked ball hat, staring at a furnace with smoke flowing out. Large red letters above it say, "Trade school equals failure with tools and tears of pleasure." Wrench below the meme. My name is tagged twice. She even left a comment. I couldn't resist. Sorry. Not sorry. Winking face with Tom. My cousin Rachel answered with a skull emoji and tears of pleasure on her face. Face covered in tears of delight. He's going to be very angry. And my mother hit it with a laughing face. That's when I silently quit the group chat. There was no spectacular exit or closing message, simply tap leave conversation, and that was all. Because if they saw me as the family's joke, I didn't need to stick around and applaud back. I was not going to defend a life that they had already decided wasn't worth celebrating. Let me clarify. Growing up, I was the hands-on type. When I was 11, I pulled apart our microwave to see if I could repair the turntable. I couldn't, but I did try. When our porch light began to flicker, I rewired it using a method I discovered 3 pages deep in a dodgy DIY site. Half the time, my room resembled a miniature hardware store, sockets, wires, and broken remotes. I didn't have any toys. I had tools. My parents didn't understand it. They weren't harsh, simply dismissive. My father, an accountant who considered spreadsheets sacred texts, would always comment, "You've got potential but no direction." My mother, a biology teacher, dubbed my initiatives cute distractions. Every time I brought home a homemade remedy, or tried to explain what I was learning, she smiled as if she were amusing a toddler showing off her finger painting skills. Meanwhile, my cousin Rachel received a cake simply for announcing her pregnancy. At family dinners, she'd rattle on and on about her internships, and they'd listen as if she were delivering the state of the nation. I once said that I was researching HVAC systems, and someone inquired if it was similar to duct cleaning. By high school, I had stopped trying to impress anyone. I wasn't failing, but I wasn't receiving awards either. There are no AP classes. There are no future business leader awards. Just me in the back of the classroom, sketching wiring designs in my notebook and wondering whether I'd ever be taken seriously. Following graduation, I attended college. Lasted 2 semesters. It felt like trying to sprint in shoes that were 2 sizes too small. I sat through courses on managerial accounting and freshman philosophy, thinking about air pressure sensors and condensers. It wasn't like I couldn't do it. I just did not want it. So I dropped out. Enrolled in a trade school. And when I told my family, the quiet was deafening until Aunt Rachel remarked, "Well, as long as you don't spend the rest of your life fixing toilets." Then came the jokes, the passive-aggressive attempts to help. Guidance, Mom's large stature, and Dad's carefully veiled disapproval. So I stopped discussing it. I worked, studied, and kept my head down. And now, months away from finishing my school, I was working part-time with a local HVAC tech who genuinely valued me, and I finally felt like I was creating something meaningful. That's why the meme hurt more than it should have. It wasn't just a silly joke. It served as a reminder that no matter how hard I worked, how many units I passed or furnaces I repaired for them, I was still on the inferior path, the one they muttered about. A cautionary tale. So yes, I left the group chat, and this time, I did not glance back. After I exited the family chat, I expected at least one person to contact me. Maybe my father. Maybe my younger cousin Jeremy, who once shadowed me for a middle school career day project and said, "Bro, your toolbox is sick." But nothing. Not even a "you, okay" or "hello" Rachel crossed the line. Only digital quiet. Initially it bothered me more than I'd like to confess. I'd skimmed through previous threads, seeing dozens of birthday wishes and who had gotten engaged messages, and wonder how I could be so close to so many people while still feeling like a guest in the family. But over time, that silence gave way to space, which led to serenity, because trade school was more than simply a detour. It was a clean slate. I enrolled in a local program that covered HVAC, electrical systems, and practical fieldwork. That kind of stuff made sense to me. I wasn't just sitting in a lecture, zoning out to presentations and out-of-date texts. I was crawling through the basement, diagnosing broken systems, figuring out how heat pumps worked under pressure, and why some vents hissed like angry cats in the winter. It was not glamorous, but it was authentic. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. My mentor, Sam, was a 50-year-old former Navy mechanic with a terrible back, a sharp tongue, and a soft spot for students who listened more than they spoke. He scolded me after I messed up a thermostat installation once, but the next day he handed me his backup multimeter like it was a medal of merit. "You've got hands that know what they're doing," he said with a laugh. "Don't let anyone who has never held a wrench tell you otherwise." I believe it was the closest thing to encouragement I'd ever had from a mature man who wasn't wearing a tie. My days were long. Class in the morning, apprenticeship in the afternoon, and weekend employment for neighbors who needed inexpensive repairs. My costume consisted of cargo pants, steel-toed boots, and a jacket with 3 different sealant stains. Meanwhile, my family remained out there. I caught peeks here and there. Rachel's posts included clinking champagne glasses at networking meetings and posing before a fireplace with the phrase, "Surround yourself with warmth, not drama." Probably intended for me. Whatever. I was too busy tightening ducts and remembering fuse box layouts to notice. Still, there were moments, little gut punches, as when my mother sent me a group photo from Rachel's lost school luncheon, a catered event with gold foil napkins and a real harpist. She had CC'd everyone in the family but me. I just discovered it because Jeremy unintentionally forwarded it to our old school alumni email list, or after my father's Facebook post became popular in our town's local group. I'm proud of Rachel for choosing the academic road. Not everyone has the courage to take the difficult path. I laughed aloud before returning to work, tightening a leaking gas. Lying in a crawl area so frigid that I could see my breath. That was my life. Working in places nobody wants to be. Solving difficulties that no one else understands. Building a future that no one else recognizes yet. And most surprisingly, I was happy. Not in a fairy tale Instagram filter manner, but in a profound, fulfilling bone-level way. The feeling of elation that comes from finishing a job, removing your gloves, and knowing you've fixed something important. I did not need their approval. But yes, I noticed the stillness, especially when it became chilly, when I knew winter was on its way, and when I started getting calls from folks I hadn't heard from in months, beginning with a name that raised my eyebrows like busted pistons. Unknown number. Voicemail was received. I hit play and heard Aunt Rachel's voice, tight, scared, and breathless. "Hey, this is Rachel. So, our furnace suddenly died and there's a frost warning approaching. The temperature is expected to plummet below zero tonight. The kids are already bundled up, and I've heard you do heating now. Please call me back as soon as possible. Seriously, please." I gazed at the phone, then the thermostat repair manual in my fingers, and finally at my old photo album, where Rachel had edited me out of a Christmas shot and claimed it was merely a formatting issue. It was just November. Winter hadn't even started yet. And I was already receiving frostbite apologies. The cold came in quickly. Like someone flipped a switch, every vent in the county began hissing in protest. Overnight, temperatures plummeted 20 degrees, pipes froze, and the town's Facebook page devolved into a communal panic crisis. People who hadn't spoken to me in years became my biggest fans. "Hello dude. It has been a long time. A quick question. Are you still fixing furnaces? I have a buddy whose elderly mother could be freezing. Probably not for me, but might you stop by? We'd like to support local companies. Is there any way you offer free diagnostics?" I was working 16-hour days, rarely sleeping, surviving on gas station burritos and caffeine so potent that it might restart a dead heart. Surprisingly, I was thriving. Business was thriving. My van's heater didn't work, but I was too busy repairing everyone else's to notice. Sam warned me. "When winter arrives, you will be the most popular guy in town." He was not kidding. By the end of the week, I had repaired 15 heat pumps, rewired 6 thermostats, and extracted a dead squirrel from an awful vent system. Do not ask. My back hurts. My palms were cracked from the cold metal, yet my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Then it occurred. The text arrived when I was repairing a blower motor in a dusty basement that smelled of expired soup and remorse. "And Rachel. Hi. This is Rachel. I need your help. The furnace has just gone out. The whole home is frigid. It is urgent. No greetings. No, how are you? Just go directly to urgent." I gazed at the screen, letting the irony sink in like frostbite. She sent me a meme 2 weeks ago, insinuating that I was a failure with tools. Now I was the instrument she needed to go through a freeze warning. The universe truly does write the best punchlines. I didn't answer right away. Not because I wanted to brag. Okay, maybe just a little, but I wanted to be intentional. I finished my present work, drove back to my apartment, had a nice shower, and ate something that wasn't covered in foil. Then I sat down, took out my phone, and went hunting. It did not take long. The meme was still on my camera roll. The one Rachel had uploaded. Cartoon character. This is a dumb caption. My name is tagged twice. I took a screenshot, uploaded it to my message and typed. "Still think I am a failure?" There are no other words. I pressed submit and waited for 5 minutes. Nothing. Then, a typing bubble appeared. Then it vanished. Then came back. Then he disappeared again. I went to bed smiling. The next morning my phone was in shambles. Missed calls and texts from cousins. Even mom had chimed in. "Perhaps you are overreacting. It was only a joke. Can you let it go? Let it go." I wasn't clinging on to anything. I wasn't throwing free heat to individuals who would sooner mock my craft than comprehend it. Rachel tried again, more panicked this time. "I apologize if the meme went too far. I honestly didn't expect you to take it personally." She followed up with, "The kids are cold. Please, and look, I'm not a monster. I know what cold can do, but I also know what disrespect feels like." So, I responded again. This time with my business card. "Schedule an appointment, standard rates, emergency call fee applies." 10 seconds later she called. I did not pick up. Another text came in. "I am your family." And I thought, finally now I'm a family. Not when I picked trade school. Not when I became qualified. Not when I worked my way up without receiving any compensation from them. No, now that her thermostat had died and her home resembled a meat locker. Now I was part of a family. No, let her call someone else. Because this time, failure with tools was completely booked. By the end of the week, I had heard from almost every branch of the family tree, including uncles, cousins, in-laws, and even Rachel's friends. When pipes froze and thermostats failed, tool failures seemed to take on new meaning. One note said, "I heard you were busy, but I was hoping you could squeeze us in. The baby has a cold." There is no name or greeting, only guilt and emoji form. Another beauty from Cousin Adam. "Yo, bro. My furnace is producing a strange clunking noise. Think it will last the night?" Attached was a grainy video of a heating unit that appeared to be coughing up nails. I didn't answer because when you start from scratch, crawl under insulation and damaged vents to make a living, you don't owe favors to those who mocked your foundation. Rachel wasn't done yet. After her first panic text, she sent a soft pitch version. "We will pay whatever you charge. I know we started off on the wrong foot." Wrong foot. Lady. You uploaded a meme labeling me a walking disappointment and tagged me twice as if it was open mic night. I finished my current job, tidied up, and went through my camera roll. There it was. The meme. Cartoon guy's tool belt. Trade school means failing with tools. The same one she found hilarious a month ago. I took a screenshot. Send it back and add a line. "Still think I am a failure?" Her typing bubble emerged and disappeared twice. Then followed another message. "The children are cold. Please." And that's where remorse tried to creep in. But here's the deal. I'd spent years attempting to provide for a family that only looked up when it was convenient. I wasn't going to give up the instant they realized I had the talents they required. I sent a business card. Standard rates apply. Emergency calls are doubled. She did not respond, but my mother did. She called the following morning. No small talk. "Josh," she snapped. "You should call your aunt." I paused. "You mean the person who made me into a joke before begging for help?" "She is your family." There it was. The classic guild boomerang. Family. As if that word had obliterated everything that came before. Funny. I stated she didn't recall when she cut me out of the family newsletter or said HVAC was hard labor for dropouts. Mom breathed like if I were being exaggerated. It was only a meme. No, I stated it was simply years of not being taken seriously, provided in JPEG format. She hung up. No goodbyes. Only cold air. I stood there for a second before chuckling. Because that was the first time in a long time that I wasn't angry. I didn't crave approval. I was booked. I was regarded by my clients, my team, and the people who mattered. And most crucially, I was no longer yearning to be seen. 2 weeks after blocking Aunt Rachel, I received a call from a local realtor named Melanie. "Hello, are you the guy who fixed the Mackenzie furnace last month?" "Yes, that was me. I have a property that needs an emergency examination before it is listed. The house is an old 2-story structure with red shutters located near Willow Creek." That sounded familiar. She reeled off the address, and I chuckled. It was Rachel's home. I did not say anything at first, only nodded to myself. The way you react when the universe throws a punchline in your lap. "Are you still available?" Melanie asked. "Oh, sure." She met me on the property 2 days later. Rachel stated that she had temporarily moved out due to a series of terrible malfunctions. Melanie employed the voice used while attempting to sell a haunted house without using the term haunted. I entered through the door and was met with stale air and the slight odor of burning dust. The house was frigid, the kind that seeps into the bones as if it had been mistreated and chose violence. I started the inspection. Ductwork, vents, and furnace unit. It was horrible. Like a textbook. Why don't you avoid preventative maintenance? Bad. Filters were so clogged they resembled felt. The wiring had not been touched in years. The entire system was practically begging for retirement. I took pictures, made notes, and gave Melanie the entire breakdown. She grimaced. Yikes. This is a lot. Yeah, whoever resided here did not believe in upkeep. She nodded slowly. Rachel did, however, explain that she had a nephew in HVAC. She stated that she was unsure whether he was legitimate. I couldn't help it. I grinned. Guess she was correct. Melanie raised an eyebrow but did not ask. By the time I was done, it was dark outside. Snow had started falling again, and as I stepped off the porch, my boots left clear tracks. I paused, returned my gaze to the house, and imagined Rachel shivering in an overpriced Airbnb, wondering why her family had become so quiet recently. Then my phone vibrated again. This time it was Rachel, The golden child. Hello, I hope you're doing well. I heard you're now dealing with realtors. That is great. I might be able to link you with a few people. Let us catch up shortly. I stared at it. No greeting for the past, no apology, no mention of the meme. Simply a smooth transition into networking, as if we were all old friends who had just lost touch for a while. I did not respond, but I did screenshot it. I added it to my own collection labeled, "What was this energy before?" Later that week I received a voicemail from Rachel's husband, Uncle Pete, who had informed me that HVAC work was a phase. "Josh, friend, I heard you come by the house. Look, things have become insane. Rachel occasionally overreacts. You understand how it is." He trailed off. Then came the genuine request. "Anyway, if there's any way you could help us out, just get things patched up for now. Nothing fancy. We're a touch tight right now." Of course they were, because the house would not sell unless the heating worked. And the only person who could accomplish it, the one they made into a meme, was the guy with the clipboard. I did not call back. Instead, I created an invoice. Full service, full cost, no solids. And I delivered it, not with venom, but with professionalism, since I didn't need retribution. I had receipts. A week after delivering the invoice, I received an email. Not a response. Not even from Rachel. It came from Melanie, the realtor. "Hey Josh. I just wanted to let you know that they have decided to postpone selling till spring. Heating repairs are now paused. Thank you again." Rachel saw the number, gasped, and chose to freeze instead. Cool. I was about halfway through another job when it happened. A client tagged me in a Facebook community post. Shout out to Fix Right HVAC. Josh arrived on time, did not overcharge, and genuinely explained what was wrong. I strongly suggest it. I got dozens of likes, followed by shares. Then someone else left a comment. Wait, I believe this person is related to Rachel Hammond. Didn't she claim he was not a true professional? Prepare the popcorn. Suddenly, my email became a digital confessional. Old pals, distant cousins, and folks I hadn't spoken with since high school. Didn't realize you were doing that well, guy. Rachel appears to be quite stupid right now. LOL. I'm really proud of you. I always knew you'd make something of yourself. That last one came from a cousin who informed me directly. You excelled in shop class. It's interesting how quickly people change their minds when your name becomes popular. Even if it's only within the PDA Facebook groups. Even mom texted, your business is getting some attention. That's great. Maybe you can finally let go of the meme thing. Let go. They hurled that meme like a dart at my spine. And now that it had come back, I was expected to brush it off. I did not respond. Instead, I shared something of my own. A photo of me in front of my work van, clutching a new certificate I recently obtained. EPA Certified Technician. Caption. Not bad for a tool-related failure. Proud of my effort. Proud of my adventure. Stay warm, everyone. It was not petty. Okay, it was petty, but it was also true. The comments poured in. Clients, neighbors, trade school classmates, anyone who has really seen the work rather than merely judged the path. Rachel did not leave a comment, yet her name appeared 3 times in the view section. Later that day, my 19-year-old apprentice David, fresh out of school and scared as hell, asked me, "Hey, was that your aunt on Zillow talking about frozen pipes?" I blinked. What? He pulled up a local news footage on his phone. Aunt Rachel was covered in a scarf indoors, saying something like, "It's just shocking. Honestly. We thought the system would last another year." She made no mention of calling me. There is no talk of avoiding the problems, only good old public blame deflection. I glanced to David. And shrugged. You will learn, youngster. Some individuals only respect your effort when it appears on the nightly news. He laughed. So, will we do her house or not? Nah, I replied, but we might fix her neighbors again. He tips better. We loaded the van. The day ended just like any other. Tired muscles, painful hands, another house with working heat, and an extra layer of confidence I didn't realize I'd gained. And most of all, every room I entered felt warmer than the family I'd left behind. By February, I had completed almost 60 service calls in 2 months. My boots were worn in, my voicemail was always full, and my van now had a permanent coffee stain in the cup holder every 5 meters. Rush. They say you know you've made it when you can finally afford to relax. I had not slowed, but something had changed. I wasn't just repairing the heat anymore. I was being recognized. People began waving when they saw my van. Strangers approached me at gas stations. I was even mentioned in the town's bulletin as one of the local business heroes. And then the unexpected occurred. I was nominated for a neighborhood business award. Apparently 2 clients had entered my name. I didn't even realize there was a nomination procedure. The letter arrived in a big envelope with foil lettering and a poorly photoshopped trophy on the front. I looked at it for a long time. I was not used to being celebrated. Not by people who weren't drinking wine or competing with each other's kids on Thanksgiving. I shared a photo on my business page. Nothing showy. I am grateful to serve this town. Thank you for the nomination. And then the likes started rolling in. Clients, neighbors, other techs, and even a few students from trade school. But the one that jumped out was Rachel. She enjoyed it. I didn't comment or message, just gave a quiet like. Rachel did, however, send a note. This is her first in months. I saw your post. Congrats. I know we had our disagreements, but you've really accomplished something. Maybe someday we can sit down and speak. I'd love to clarify the air. No mention of the meme, no apology, just a gentle knock on the door she helped close years ago. I did not respond, not out of rage, but by choice. Some bridges do not burn, they freeze. And I'd learned how to make my own ice highways. Instead, I continued working and expanding. I accompanied David, my new apprentice, to his first solo repair. He was 19, apprehensive, and a lot like me. The child had potential, but he still apologized whenever he dropped a wrench. We repaired an old townhouse heater jointly. The owner rewarded us with banana bread and a mug with the words, "Thanks a ton," scrawled in comedic sand. David smiled the whole way back. "You always know what to say," he added. With clients, I shrugged because the best of them had disregarded me. He appeared bewildered. I laughed. "Don't worry. You'll learn how to be loud without shouting. Simply keep showing up." That afternoon, I accompanied him to the storefront for which I had just signed the lease. It wasn't a large space, simply a clean area on the corner of Maple and First, with room for a front desk, 2 workstations, and a rear room for equipment. But to me, it appeared to be the future. I unlocked the door and let him enter first. "This is ours." "Ours?" I nodded. "We aren't just mending stuff. We're developing something that will last through the winter." He gently turned, staring at the walls, already dreaming. "Do you think we could put up a neon sign? Let us not get carried away." He grinned. Then deadpan. "Do we send a flyer to your aunt?" I smiled. "Nah," I replied. "So let the cold do the talking." Spring arrived early that year. Not in a poetic manner. Just a little less snow, fewer pipes bursting, and slightly fewer anxious calls at 2 a.m. M wondered why someone's furnace was clicking like it was possessed. Business did not slow down significantly, it simply shifted gears. Now it was inspections, cleanings, and system upgrades. The emergency faded, but the momentum remained. I started receiving commercial calls. Local hardware stores desired collaborations. Real estate agents saved my card in their preferred vendor file. People asked for me by name. This never used to happen. I used to be the kid in the back. The one who was asked during family dinners. "So, what do you do now?" Now my name had weight. Not because I demanded it, but because I deserved it. One Saturday David and I were organizing the new office when he said, "Are you going to the family barbecue next weekend?" I blinked. I was not invited. He raised an eyebrow. "Seriously? Seriously?" I hadn't expected an invitation, but hearing it spoken hit me harder than I had anticipated. I suppose part of me anticipated they might attempt. Even a half-hearted group text resulted in nothing but quiet. Then David replied, "Want to throw our own?" I chuckled. "What? Like a grand opening cookout?" "Yeah," he shrugged. "Why not? You have a vehicle, a storefront, and a cup that reads, 'Thanks a ton. Let's celebrate.'" So we did. We set up folding tables in front. I got a friend to bring a grill. Distributed flyers to previous clients and neighbors. Created a cheesy sign that read, "Fix the HVAC right now with bonus hot dogs." Dozens of people turned up, clients brought their children. A realtor immediately provided me with a referral. Even Sam, my former mentor, stopped by and growled. Not bad for a youngster who would tumble over extension cords. And then, while I was cleaning mustard off my shirt, I noticed her and Rachel standing across the street, watching. She was not dressed up. No sunglasses, no heels, just jeans, a jacket, and an expression I couldn't make out. She didn't stroll over or wave. Instead, she stood there for a moment before turning and walking away. And you know what? I didn't feel angry, triumphant, or anything Instagram-worthy. I felt relieved since I wasn't invisible anymore. I did not need her to see me. The entire community has already done this. Later that evening, after we finished cleaning up, I sat alone in the new office for a bit. The lighting was dim, my boots were removed. I slumped back in the creaky office chair, exhaling deeply, heavy, and grateful. On my desk was an old meme, printed, folded, and taped shut. I picked it up, grinned, and tossed it in the garbage. Not because it didn't matter, but because it no longer did. David strolled in with a coffee and asked, "What's next, boss?" I thought about it for a moment. Perhaps recruit one additional technician. Consider expanding the van fleet. Maybe take a friggin' day off. Let's keep building, I suggested. He grinned as he worked through each furnace one by one. And as I looked at the walls I painted, the business I started, and the comfort I provided to strangers, I realized something. The warmest room I've ever stepped into was one that I constructed myself. My sister seduced my partner in front of everyone, so I gave her a man who'd leave her $80,000 in debt and wanted by the FBI. I was afflicted with a built-in boyfriend thief on the day my younger sister Diane was born. And I am not referring to borrowed clothing or innocent crushes. I'm talking about the type of theft where if I brought home a lover, she'd have him wrapped around her finger in weeks. If I introduced someone over Sunday dinner, she'd be DMing him before dessert was served. If I share a lovely couple photo on Instagram, she may run into him at his favorite coffee shop the next day. Everyone claimed Diane acquired mom's beautiful beauty, and I received dad's sharp wit. The comparison hurt, but I learned to live with it until the boyfriend stealing began. It started quietly enough in high school. Trevor, my lover, suddenly decided he wanted to study at our place every afternoon. Diane would glide by in her cheerleading uniform, begging him for assistance with her calculus homework. I didn't notice the manipulation because I trusted them both entirely. However, in retrospect, the symptoms were clearly visible. By the time we reached our 20s, Diane's tactics had become surgically precise. I dated Cameron for 6 months before inviting him to meet the family. Diane had a difficulty 1 week after that horrible meal and needed to cry on his wide shoulder at 2 a.m. They slept together the same night. Then came Marcus from my marketing firm. The same routine: family meal, fabricated emergency, and a midnight comfort session. When I discovered their sensual text conversations, she had the audacity to bend her head and smile softly. "I'm just making sure they're worthy of you, Laurel," she explained, fluttering her eyes. Marcus failed the test miserably. Deep down I realized she had a point. If these men could quit me for my sister so easily, then they weren't my soulmates after all. But that rationale did nothing to alleviate the scorching feeling of betrayal in my chest. Then came Derek, who almost broke me. We had been dating for 2 years, seriously considering marriage after I got my nursing degree. Diane drank heavily at his birthday celebration, which I had prepared for weeks, and kissed him in front of everyone at Applebee's. When he chose her over me, she had the courage to post on Facebook, "There are times when you can't help but fall hard for someone. Sorry, not sorry." Moaned me on Thanksgiving. Her voice is as keen as a carving knife. "You need to stop parading these men in front of Diane," she screamed, stirring the gravy. "She can't resist temptation when it's right in front of her. Why do you keep setting her up for failure?" In my mind, I had not dangled anything. I'd tried to build meaningful relationships, but they crumbled under my sister's constant charm offensive. 3 months later, fate shone upon me at my college roommate's wedding in Chicago. That is where I met Connor. Everything I'd ever wanted wrapped up in a 6'2" bundle. Kind, successful as a software engineer, and seems resistant to female manipulation. For 8 glorious months, I kept him a secret from my family. We drove to adjacent towns for dates, avoided posting couple images, and I told no one about him. I believed I'd finally thwarted Diane's boyfriend-stealing plot. This was the most healthy, honest connection I'd ever had. Connor spoke of our future with such confidence that I began to believe in happy endings again. But then my loose-lipped cousin Amanda accidentally mentioned Connor to Mom during a phone chat, and Mom automatically introduced him to Diane within a few hours. My sister's investigation talents were on par with those of the FBI. She found him within a few days, via his company's website. The treachery hit me like a freight train when I used my key to enter Connor's apartment and discovered them tangled in our bed. The worst part was not catching them in the act. It was Diane's reaction. She sat up, absolutely nude and shameless, and dealt the fatal blow. "Honestly, I did you a great service," she added, gathering her clothes with no regrets. "He hardly lasted 10 minutes. You deserve so much more than that, sis." Connor simply shrugged, without trying to hide himself. "Your sister is just too hot for me not to attempt. You understand, correct?" I stood there, quivering with wrath and shame, while Diane kissed him farewell, as if I were invisible, Nothing more than furniture in the room. That soul-crushing experience solidified everything for me. Diane did not abduct my lover for sisterly protection or pure attraction. She did it because she could. Because she enjoyed watching me fall. And because sabotaging my happiness had become her strange hobby. Walking to my Honda Civic in the parking lot, my palm trembling so violently that I could hardly hold the keys, I made a decision that would change everything. Diane craved males and couldn't resist them. Okay, I'll give her exactly what she wants. Wrapped in a box that would consume her from the inside out. The concept began to form in my head during the 40-minute drive home. Diane consistently went with the same type. Gorgeous, attractive, and seemingly successful guys made her feel selected and special. She never looked deeper than the surface. Never questioned their histories or backgrounds. That blind spot would be her undoing. I spent the next few weeks thoroughly researching public records, judicial databases, and background check websites. That is how I came across Vincent Romano, a wonderfully gorgeous man who claimed to be a venture entrepreneur from Denver. He recently split after his ex-wife detailed years of financial and emotional abuse in court files. 2 separate restraining orders have been issued against other ex-girlfriends who are currently being investigated for securities fraud. Perfect. Vincent's LinkedIn profile portrayed him as a successful entrepreneur, replete with a professional headshot that could have earned him modeling contracts. But delving deeper, uncovered the truth. A clever con artist who specialized in luring ladies into financial disaster. I made a phony LinkedIn profile for a possible investor, and contacted him with a business pitch. We met at a Starbucks in downtown Denver, where I expertly played the sensitive elder sister character. I showed him Diane's Instagram images, raving about how she constantly stole my boyfriends because she was so attractive. I just can't compete with her, I admitted, my voice cracking with trained emotion. Every guy I've ever loved chooses her instead. I feel so unworthy. Vincent's eyes brightened like a hunter spotting wounded prey. He saw precisely what I wanted him to see. A broken lady he could easily exploit, with a stunning sister who offered the ultimate trophy. You seem like an incredible person, Laurel, he added, leaning across the table to grasp my hand. Any man who would abandon you for someone else is an imbecile. Hook, line and sinker. We started dating right away, with me playing the smitten girlfriend and him laying the framework for his regular con. He showered me with lavish dinners at the Capitol Grill, weekend getaways to Aspen, and promises of a future together. However, I could see from his act that every compliment and gesture was intended to make me emotionally reliant. After 3 weeks of this deception, I told him I wanted to keep our relationship hidden from Diane since she had a habit of taking my men. Then I invited him as my date to my mother's birthday dinner at Olive Garden, well aware of the chain reaction I was initiating. Vincent believed he was playing me, preparing himself to make me his next victim while include Diane as a bonus conquest. He had no idea he was heading into a trap that I had spent weeks crafting. Vincent delivered an outstanding performance at his mother's birthday supper. He treated Diane as if she were invisible, while lavishing me with attention that seemed sincere enough to fool everyone at the table. He complimented my lasagna choice, laughed at my father's horrible jokes, and even brought Mom flowers. But Diane couldn't bear being ignored, especially by such a handsome man. She escalated just as I predicted, caressing Vincent's arm while she spoke, leaning too near when she laughed, and muttering inside jokes that only he could hear. Her flirting grew so evident that even our naive parents took notice. I excused myself to the restroom, where I saw Diane move in for the kill through the slightly cracked door. My sister is sweet, but she's pretty vanilla in every way, she said, sliding her finger over Vincent's forearm. I could show you stuff she wouldn't think of trying. When I returned to the table and saw them exchanging phone numbers, I flung my glass of Merlot Square in Vincent's face and rushed out, crying. The performance of a lifetime, complete with mascara dripping down my cheekbones. Diane called that night. Her voice filled with phony worry that did not fool me for a second. Vincent totally came on to me at dinner, she claimed. But frankly, you're better off without him. Something about him appears very sketchy. Within 2 days, she was sharing Instagram tales from his fancy condo in Cherry Creek. Within a week, she had fallen madly in love with his falsehoods. Within a month, she had moved in totally and given him access to her bank accounts for our joint expenses. I watched everything develop from the sidelines, feeling a mix of contentment and mounting unease. Diane was heading blindly into quicksand, and I had pointed her in that direction. But after years of having my heart broken by her selfishness, I couldn't bring myself to warn her of the danger she was in. The first break in Diane's idyllic new life occurred 6 weeks later, when a lawyer representing Vincent's ex-wife contacted her personally. Vincent had hidden assets during the divorce procedures. Diane could now be held accountable as an accomplice to fraud. They think I might also be sued. Diane contacted me, panic creeping into her voice. But Vincent explained everything. His ex-wife is just bitter and trying to stir problems. I made supportive noises in private, knowing that this was merely the beginning. When it was revealed that Vincent's investment enterprise was an elaborate Ponzi scheme, Diane had already put her whole $30,000 funds. She was convinced she was going in on the ground floor of the next major tech startup when the SEC shut it down, and her money vanished overnight. It must be a mistake, she wept during another late-night call. Vincent's attorneys are challenging it. He promises we'll receive everything back plus interest. However, when Diane attempted to leave his condo after finding additional lies, Vincent revealed his true colors. He gripped her wrist so hard that it snapped, then locked her in the bedroom, ranting about ungrateful women who didn't appreciate anything he'd done for them. When she finally escaped and attempted to access her accounts, she discovered that he had emptied everything, including her checking, savings, and 401k. Worse, he'd stolen her personal information to apply for credit cards and loans in her name, leaving her with $80,000 in debt she had no idea about. The ultimate blow came at dawn on a Tuesday morning when FBI officers knocked down Vincent's condo door. They discovered Diane's signature on scores of fake documents that Vincent had duped her into signing, making her an unsuspecting collaborator in securities fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. The phone rang at 6:47 a.m. Diane's name appeared on the screen, but I allowed it to go to voicemail. Diane's voicemail was hardly audible between her cries. "Laurel, please. I'm in county jail, and they say I might go to prison. Vincent used me for everything, and now the FBI believes I was assisting him. I know I have harmed you, but please, I implore you. I need help." I listened to it 3 times before I deleted it. Within a few days, the local news had taken up the story. A local lady has been detained as part of a multi-million-dollar fraud conspiracy. Diane's mugshot appeared on Station 7's evening broadcast. Her mascara smeared and her eyes were sunken with grief. Mom called immediately, hysterical. "You must help your sister. She made mistakes, but she did not deserve this. She made her own decisions," I responded gently. "Just as she did with Cameron, Marcus, Derek, and Connor." The hush between us lasted until Mom said, "You knew, didn't you? You understood who he was." I did not respond since the truth was too complex for a simple yes or no. Had I realized Vincent would kill Diane so completely? Not precisely. Had I adequately investigated him to realize he was dangerous? Absolutely. Diane eventually pleaded guilty to lesser charges in exchange for testifying against Vincent. She spent 8 months in minimum security jail and emerged with a felony record, wrecked credit, and a restraining order prohibiting Vincent from contacting her again. The family dinners ceased. Mom couldn't look at me the same way, split between horror at what I'd done and reluctant admiration for my calculated vengeance. Dad simply shook his head whenever Diane's name was mentioned, muttering about natural consequences and chickens coming home to roost. After her release, Diane relocated across the nation to Portland, where she worked as a barista and gradually rebuilt her life. We haven't communicated in 2 years, although I do occasionally check her Instagram. She appears older and more cautious today. Her eyes have lost their arrogant, predatory sparkle and become quieter and more hesitant. Sometimes I wonder whether I went too far, if wrecking my sister's life was worth the thrill of finally winning our bizarre game. But then I recall Connor's shrug, Diane's brazen smugness, and years of watching my happiness erode for her amusement. She finally got what she had been looking for her entire life, a man she couldn't resist. She just didn't expect him to stop destroying everything she valued. I've been in therapy for a year, working through the complex feelings of planning someone's downfall, even someone who had repeatedly injured me. My therapist argues that revenge rarely offers the peace we expect. And she's correct. I do not feel triumphant or vindicated. Mostly I feel hollow where all that rage used to reside. But I can sleep easier knowing Diane will never steal another woman's lover again. Certain lessons may only be learned via total catastrophe. And my sister learned the hard way. Golden Brothers spent my money on his party and hired guards to block me from entering. When I showed up anyway, he said, "He's not family." Hello Reddit. So, as a 25-year-old male, I recently discovered what happens when you give too much for too long and then ask for simple respect. You are kicked in the teeth by your own relatives. This is not a sob tale. This is me putting it all out after being treated like a walking wallet while my younger brother Frank, 22, a man, was commended for simply breathing. Allow me to provide some little context so you know I'm not simply being dramatic. My family has been playing favorites since Frank was old enough to ask for and receive a new Xbox. I was the mature and responsible one. Translation: do everything and receive nothing. For example, when I turned 18, my parents had me start paying $350 per month to live at home. This is not a joke. The same room I grew up in. Same rickety bed. I have the same wallpaper from when I was 12. $350 per month, or hit the road. So I paid. I worked part-time in a tire business. I finished school, I handled it. Frank turned 18. They actually handed him my former room. After I moved out, I purchased him a flat screen and told him he was still figuring out his life. Finding his way resembled sleeping till noon and streaming Fortnite for 9 hours straight. When I arrived home to visit, he was wearing my hoodie, which I had been seeking for since Thanksgiving. I told him, "Dude, that's mine." He said, "Well, you don't live here anymore." I looked at my mother. She answered, "Maybe don't leave stuff behind if it's that important." That was just normal. Anyway, I moved out at 21, had a solid job in logistics, lived cheaply, saved like crazy, and guess what? My parents began contacting me for assistance as soon as I arrived on solid ground. Groceries, electricity bill, and assistance with car repairs. "Frank is having a hard time." My mother would call me with a guilt trip about how we had always supported you. "Now it's your chance to help us." So I did. Like an idiot. I did. I set up monthly automatic deposits to meet Frank's rent of $750 per month for 3 years. In addition, every college semester, I contributed more than $3,000 for books and tuition. Never asked for restitution. Never imposed it on anyone. Not once. I truly believed I was doing something worthwhile. Then I learned about the graduation celebration. The process began with a photo dump on the family group chat. Long tables, balloons, and a large sheet cake with the words, "You did it, Frank," in gold letters. Somebody even booked a party tent. No invitation, no message. Just pictures. There's no mention of the individual who pays the bills. So, I texted my mother. Me. "Where is the party?" "Her Brook Hill. The same location where we celebrated Uncle Mike's anniversary." No apologies. Number oops. "Sorry. I forgot to tell you, it's simply cold information." At first I thought it might be a mistake. Maybe they thought I was working or busy. I imagined I'd show there and surprise them, and everything would be okay. I put on a clean shirt and hole-free jeans, drove 45 minutes to Brook Hill, and pulled up to a house with 10 cars in front. Uncle Joe's SUV, Cousin Leo's Civic, and Dad's pickup. Everyone was present except for me. I walked up the driveway and was immediately halted by 2 rental guards. One person explained that this is a private gathering. I said, "I'm his brother." The guy stared me up and down, as if I had just gotten out of the sewer. The second guy asked for my name, walked away, and returned with Frank, my mother, and my father. Frank looked like he stepped out of a fragrance advertisement. Flashy clothes, slicked hair, gold chain, and holding his phone as if I were wasting his time. He looked at me and stated, "He doesn't belong here." He was serious. I chuckled, assuming he was joking. Then my father chimed in. "You showed up after everything you said?" I blinked. "I have not said anything." My mother attempted to smooth things over. "Freya, we simply wanted today to be nice, no difficulties." I stared at them. I pay his rent. I cover his tuition. And I am the problem. Frank scoffed. "You did not do that for me. You simply wanted to make yourself feel significant." I looked him dead in the eye. "Then you are welcome." I turned around and left. My father called after me. "Perhaps you should have inquired whether you were invited." I drove home without pausing. There's no gas, no drive-through, nothing. I entered my flat, kicked off my shoes, sat on my awful old futon, and stared at the wall. Then I grabbed up my phone and typed a message. "Starting next month, you will be responsible for paying your own rent. Good luck. Send it." Did not even wait for a response. 2 hours later, someone knocked. It was Frank. He was still wearing the same clothing from the party. His eyes were swollen, and he appeared to have not slept. "Please don't do this," he asked. "I can't afford it. You already know that." I didn't say anything, just stood there, silent. For once in my life, I allowed him to squirm. So, Frank stood in my doorway with puffy eyes, still dressed in his little party outfit as if he hadn't changed since being elected king of the backyard barbecue. "Please, don't do this," he repeated. "I can't afford it. You already know that. Correct?" But that didn't stop him from ordering $17 chicken wings at 2 a.m. I did not move, instead leaning against the doorframe and staring at him. I'd spent years keeping this guy afloat while he treated me like background noise. I wasn't in a hurry to extend him another lifeline. He cleared his throat. You could have at least warned me. I awoke to my rent app stating that the payment had failed. Yes, that was the point. I let the stillness last just long enough to make him uncomfortable. Then he did what Frank does if things don't go his way. He attempted to talk his way out of it. It's been a tough year, man. Exams and clinic hours. I barely sleep. Yeah. I cut in. I remember those Instagram tales. The late night tacos. The beach weekend. And the unexpected vacation to Miami. That seemed exhausting. He appeared to want to respond but was unsure which lie to tell. Every month I pay your rent. Every term, I helped with schoolwork. Every time Mom texted saying the refrigerator was empty. Who covered it? I asked. Did you? He murmured. Right. Then you told security that I wasn't family. He looked away. It was not like that. Just like that. Word by word. He sighed and walked in without asking. Sat on my couch like if he owned the place. Back when we were teenagers, he would burst into my room. And I would have to hide my belongings to keep them from disappearing. Do you live like this? He replied, inspecting my place like it was a museum exhibit for impoverished people. I raised an eyebrow. Yeah. Paying your own bills looks like this. No comment. He touched his cheek. I don't understand why you're cutting me off right now. You do not? I asked. You stood there as I was publicly humiliated at your party. And you allowed it to happen. He opened his mouth, but I continued. You never told our parents to stop treating me like garbage. You let me pay your rent for 3 years and then called me a jealous loser in front of your friends. He became quiet. It's probably the first time in years. I could have ended there, but I had one more question. Why didn't Granny and Grandpa attend the party? His face twitched. They were not invited. By whom? He paused. Mom did not want them to come. Why? She claimed they continually bring up old topics. Grandpa speaks too much. Grandma is overly opinionated. Do you mean the man who provided Dad the down payment on the house and the woman who assisted in raising both of you while Mom returned to school? He looked down. You did not stop her. I said I didn't agree either. That is not the same. He stood up as if this was his cue to leave. Whatever, guy. You have made your selection. I guess I will figure it out. Yes, I said. You will. He went without saying anything else. An hour later, my phone vibrated. Voicemail. Hello dear, it's Grandma. We learned what had transpired. We weren't invited either. Your brother made some unpleasant remarks. Just know how proud we are of you. We will stop by tomorrow morning. I am bringing coffee. I actually smiled. It's the first time all week. Next day, 10:45 a.m. Sharp, I see a silver Civic pull up. Grandma emerges wearing a flowered top and holding a pink box as if it were precious. Grandpa is wearing his crusty old army cap, which drives Dad crazy. They enter as if they have been coming for a long time. You owe them nothing, Grandma says. You have done more than enough. Grandpa grunts. You're the only one in that family who's ever done anything meaningful. We sat, ate muffins, and sipped coffee. There was no drama, no backhanded insults, just a peaceful morning that felt more like family than the previous 10 years combined. After they depart, I sit on the edge of my bed, clutching the still warm cup, and feel something change. Not rage, not vengeance, simply clarity. I'm done waiting for them to respect me. I'm not asking anymore. At midday, I called my father. He responds as if he's glad to hear from me. Hello, son? Is everything okay? Grandma and Grandpa stopped by and brought muffins. Silence. They didn't attend the celebration, I add. Yeah, there wasn't enough room. You are aware of Grandpa's mood swings. I understand exactly how he gets it. He shows up. He attempts to turn. Anyway. Is everything all right? I just wanted to say, starting now, I'm done paying Frank's bills. No rent, no tuition, nothing. Another silence. Then the voice shifted. That false, sweet guilt-tripped tone. Freya. You're not struggling, right? No house, no children. You've always been good with money. So because I didn't screw up my life, I'm obliged to help the person who did. That is not what I am saying. This is what you intended. We only wanted to give him a chance. I gave him one for 3 years. You all chuckled as he told me I was not welcome. He says nothing. I'll tell Mom personally, I add. I just wanted to give you a heads up. Then I hung up. I assumed that was all. But 20 minutes later, someone else knocked. It was not Frank. Lily, my cousin, Was carrying a cheap plastic Tupperware while avoiding eye contact. "Can I come in?" she inquired. She did not wait for a response. She sat down, glanced around like she was exploring a shelter and said, "I didn't know they were going to do that to you." Frank said that garbage, and I chuckled. Not because I believed it, but because I couldn't think of anything else to do. I did not respond. "I'm moving out," she explained. I told Aunt Rose, "I'm done with the family circus." Lily, the quiet cousin who never stood up to anyone, was accepted into a graduate program in Vermont. I was still in one of Frank's group chats, which he doesn't know about. She handed me her screen, which I read. "I told you he'd show up. Guy still thinks he's one of us, pays my bills, and gets treated like a dog. LOL. I returned the phone. No rage, no shock, just confirmation. "I'm telling you this because people need to know who they're defending," she explained. I nodded. "Thanks." I then opened the family group chat and posted the screenshot with no caption or explanation, just raw proof of what I'd been dealing with. Allow them to choke on it. After I dropped the screenshot, the family group chat stopped working. Not a single response in nearly 15 minutes. Then Aunt Martha quietly exited the conversation. No goodbyes, no emojis, just gone. Lily texted me directly. "Holy crap." I did not respond. 5 more minutes elapsed. Then Uncle Wes added a thumbs up emoji. There's nothing else. Mom read the message but did not respond. Dad did not even open it. Frank became silent. Nobody defended him. Nobody protected me either. Aunt Rose contacted me separately. Perhaps this was not the best way to approach things. I returned one line. Neither was allowing him to insult me while I paid his rent. 10 minutes later, I heard automobile doors outside. My folks' pickup pulled into my lot. Both of them stepped outside. Dad wore his regular work jeans. Mom held a paper bag. They did not knock right away. Then they did. I opened the door. "We need to talk," Dad explained. They walked in and glanced around as if they'd never seen my property. Same couch, space heater, and damaged kitchen tiles. Mom handed me the bag. "Brought you lunch." I placed it on the table without touching it. Dad sat down. "You embarrassed your brother," he added. "You embarrassed yourself," I responded. "He's hurt," Mom said. "So was I." "You exposed him." I repeated what he had written. "He was ranting," Dad explained. "I was funding him." They did not argue with that. They simply sat there. "We can't afford to pay his rent," Mom explained. "Then he should return home." "He claims it is hazardous there," she added. I did not respond. Dad leaned forwards. "We aren't asking for much. Just aid him till he gets a job." "He had a job," I explained. "He quit." He stated that it was stressful, as was working 50 hours and being criticized for it. They did not look up. "Fine," Dad said. "What about a loan?" "No. We will repay it." You used that statement 3 years ago." They stood up. Mom said, "After everything we did for you." "Yes," I answered. "When I turned 18, I recall receiving my rent bill. They went without saying anything else." That night, Lily texted me another screenshot. "Frank created a new group chat. He is overreacting. He always wanted to be the victim. Let him post whatever he wants. Nobody cares." The new chat had half of the cousins in it. Some had already abandoned the main family thread. Lily submitted the screenshot in the main chat. Nobody replied. The next day, Frank contacted me immediately. "I hope you're happy. You've ruined everything." I didn't respond. That afternoon, grandmother called. "Your folks called us. You said you were going to cut them off." "I'm going to cut the money." I said you could do it. "They want me to apologize." "You will not." "I am not." "Good." Later, Grandpa called. He told me to check my mail. Inside came a sealed envelope with 2 $50 bills and a short letter. We were not asked to any of the birthdays by anyone who remembered them. The following day, Dad called again. "I spoke to your uncle. He claimed you showed him the screenshot. He was in the chat. He saw for himself. You made it public. He made it public by sending it to 10 individuals." Dad hung up. 3 days have passed. Frank's flat displayed an eviction notice. Lily texted me a photo of it stuck to his door. Aunt Rose called me that night. "He needs assistance. He has to fix it himself. He's your brother. He is not my problem." She also hung up. The next morning, my landlord knocked. Said someone had called pretending to be me and inquired about my lease. I inquired who. He stated, some guy named Frank. I filed a police report. That night I transferred my savings to a new account and changed all of my passwords. 2 days later, I received a text from a random number. I hope you enjoy living alone forever. I blocked it. Grandma dropped off some more muffins. You do not need to keep defending yourself, she said. I am not. I'm done being useful to people who don't treat me like a family member. She nodded, left the box, and did not remain long. By the weekend, half the family had stopped speaking to me. The other half sent messages such, you did the right thing, but never said it publicly. I closed the family group chat and left it. The following week, Frank launched a GoFundMe campaign with the description, trying to stay afloat after an unexpected setback. 3 people donated, but none from the family. I reported it because it contained misleading information. It was removed. The next day my mother texted, you made your point. I responded in red. That Sunday I had a knock on my door. It was Uncle Wesley. He handed me the envelope. Inside was a single note. Some of us have always known. We just haven't said it till now. There was no money inside. I didn't need any. Monday morning I received a note from an old neighbor. He claimed Frank was back home, whining about how everyone had abandoned him, and that he was telling people I had broken off the family over a party. I emailed him a screenshot. He left me with a red face. That night, Lily tagged me in a post. Sometimes revenge is unnecessary. Simply stop giving individuals free passes. She uploaded a picture of the party decorations, which I was never invited to. The following comment came from someone I did not know. Damn, that guy who paid for everything and got iced out. I noticed the tale on Reddit. Yes, she responded. That is my cousin. He eventually stood up for himself. 2 days after Lily shared the screenshot, Frank called from a different number. I got it. Okay, I messed up, he admitted. Yep. I did not intend what I stated during the chat. You typed it, it was only a joke. You are evicted. Still funny. Nothing happened then. Can I stay at your apartment for a while? Only a week or two? Number, not even for a few days? Number, I am your brother. You told security that I wasn't. Click. 2 hours later, Mom sent out a group message. Frank is going through a lot right now, we're appealing for his family's support. Everyone make mistakes. Aunt Rose joined in. Publicly shaming one's own blood is not how we address problems. Lily responded, neither is mocking the person who paid your bills. Uncle Wes exited the discussion. Cousin Leo DM'd me. It was a brave move. It's about time someone say it. I didn't respond. That night Dad called. You should apologize, he said. For what? For blowing this out of proportion. I presented proof. You broadcast it in public. He bragged in public. You are not acting like family. You stopped treating me like family years ago. He hung up. The next morning, I was called into a quick meeting at work. HR received an anonymous ethical complaint alleging financial coercion and familial abuse. My organization traced the IP address to a burner connected to Frank's flat. I filed the police report. They asked if I wanted to press charges. I said yes. I froze my credit. I changed all of my account information and closed down my social media accounts. That night, Lily texted me again. He says you turned Grandma against him. She wasn't on his side from the beginning. Later, Lily included me in a tale. An image of the family group chat exit screen. Caption. Sometimes you have to cut ties to stop bleeding. I did not enjoy it. Did not repost. Just moved on. On Saturday morning a neighbor texted me a snapshot of my parents in his driveway, talking to his wife. Caption. Your parents are attempting to clear your name. I thought you'd appreciate the heads up. I didn't respond. An hour later, the doorbell rang. A certified letter from my parents. I typed a message. Freya, your actions are shocking. Families forgive, not banish. We are heartbroken. You've chosen retribution above healing. No signature, just Mom and Dad. I printed it and attached a note on the front. You only cared once I quit paying. I mailed it back the same day. 3 days later, Frank launched another GoFundMe campaign. Same title, revised target of $1,200, and 2 donations. One from a random friend and one from a burner account I knew from our shared Netflix login. I reported it, and it was taken off. On Thursday afternoon, Granny dropped muffins again. Are they still trying to guilt you? She asked. They've switched to pity now. You do not owe them softness. You gave them years. She gave me a folded note. It was Grandpa's handwriting. When a man achieves serenity, he does not exchange it for noise. I taped it above the sink. Next week, HR followed up. The lawsuit progressed. A formal complaint was lodged. Charges are pending. Frank did not respond to the notification. Uncle Wesley called. He blames everyone except himself. I said, let him. Do you need anything? I'm good. Keep it this way. That weekend, Lily messaged again. He is currently staying in your previous room. Figures. Still telling folks that you overreacted. I did not. He understands that. He simply doesn't want to say it. I didn't respond. 2 days later, I received another package. There's no return address. Inside was the hoodie Frank had stolen from me senior year. Folded and washed. It still smelled of fabric softener. No note. I placed it in the donation bin outside my building. The next morning, Aunt Rose left a voicemail. Your folks are distraught. Your sibling isn't eating. You've proved your argument. Now, let it go. I removed it. On Tuesday afternoon, Lily provided another update. This time it's a photo of her graduate school admission letter. Caption. Some of us move onward. The most popular response came from grandmother, and some finally stood still long enough to grow. The next morning, I received one final message from Frank. Thank you for ruining my life. I hope you're proud. I removed it. No response. There's no necessity. Grandma called a week after Frank sent his final text message. He's in the basement now, she added, sulking and crying. Still blaming everyone, but the one in the mirror. That sounds familiar. Your mother attempted guilt. Your father went silent. They're now trying shame. I am not biting. You should not. That night, Lily shared a screenshot from the cousins group conversation. Frank had wrote, I don't care what anyone says. Louis should have had my back. He knows how hard things have been for me. No one responded. 3 cousins silently exited the chat. Uncle Wes messaged me separately. Do you want help changing your locks? Already finished. Friday morning, I received a letter in the mail. There is no return address, only a folded page of notebook paper written in Sharpie. When you cease doing foolishly, you will always be the villain. I had a printed photo of myself at my college graduation with the word ungrateful scribbled in red over my face. I didn't even flinch, simply dropping it into a folder with the rest of the trash for the police report. Monday, I received an email from the company's legal department. Your brother submitted 3 phony anonymous tips through our whistleblower portal. All were linked to a masked IP, but the trail led back to his building. Do you wish to testify? Yes. The following day, they served him with papers. Grandmother called again. He ripped it up in front of your father and rushed off, ranting about how you had destroyed the family name. What did Dad do? Told him to clean the garage? Frank screamed and slammed the door like a toddler. That Sunday, Lily moved out. There's no drama. She simply loaded her car and left. Before she drove away, she wrote on the fridge. Thanks for showing me that self-respect isn't betrayal. She texted me later that night. New apartment, new job lined up, new chapter. We didn't talk about Frank. We didn't need to. The next morning, Frank started a new GoFundMe. The game plan remains unchanged, despite the new name. My family has abandoned me during my time of need. I am not flawless, but I deserve another opportunity. Please help me start over. It received 2 donations before being reported and pulled down. This time, I did not report it. Someone else finished it faster. Midweek, I stopped into the old house to get Grandpa's old toolbox from the garage. I didn't call ahead. I did not knock. I walked in, took it, and left. As I walked back to my car, Frank stood at the upstairs window, arms crossed like a grumpy extra in a high school production. Just watched. Did not come out. Didn't say anything. 3 days later, Lily provided another screenshot. Frank had shared his story. Sometimes those closest to you are the ones that leave you bleeding. Nobody responded. Grandma came the following weekend. I dropped off leftovers and a tiny tin box. This was your uncle's. She stated that he wanted you to have it. Inside was a note he penned years ago before he moved away permanently. There's always one kid in the family who does everything correctly, yet is nevertheless treated as if he doesn't belong. Don't let this keep you trapped. Leave your guilt behind. I pinned it to my refrigerator, right next to my rent receipt. The following Tuesday, the legal department emailed again. Case closed. Cease and desist acknowledged. You're clear. I responded with a single sentence. All debts closed. That evening I permanently removed Frank's phone number, then my parents', followed by Aunt Rose's. I blocked any number that did not follow the boundaries I defined. That night I prepared dinner in my apartment. No guilt, no noise, and no second guessing. I sat down, ate calmly, and didn't think about who wasn't present. It was finally over. 6 months later, life moved quickly. The raise came first, followed by the promotion. I relocated to a better location, closer to the city, quieter, and without the incessant echo of guilt in the walls. I didn't announce it. No photos or status updates, just keys, boxes, and peace. Grandma knew though. She helped me hang the drapes and left a new coffee maker on the counter. No more weak mornings, she added. The corporation released an official memo. The harassment allegation was dropped. There is no need for additional action. I printed a copy and placed it in the folder with the others. Closed, filed, and done. I saw Frank again by chance. He was working part-time at a tire business off the highway, pushing carts and inspecting the tread. I drew in for a rotation. He didn't recognize the car. As I was paying, he stepped out with a stack of receipts, noticed me, and froze. I didn't wave or nod, just took the keys and left. 1 hour later, Lily texted me. He said, "You looked smug." That wasn't good. She was admitted into her graduate program in Texas. Full scholarship. She said she was staying with an old friend until she found her own place. "You are the only reason I did not become one of them. She told me that you did it yourself." "No, you lighted the fuse." My parents attempted to call again in January. New numbers, no voicemails, just the silent spam of desperation. Uncle Wes delivered a final message. "They say you abandoned your family." I did not. I escaped. He toughened it. Never responded again. In March, Mr. Reynolds, my former high school history teacher, contacted me. "I saw your name in an alumni write-up. I'm glad to see that someone turned out normal. I appreciate it. Still doing car repairs on the side?" "Nope. Something is currently being built." He sent the thumbs up emoji. That was it. I launched my own business a month later. Consulting, logistics, and private contracts. The majority of people find it boring. Freedom means something to me. Grandma provided the down payment. You are the only person who has ever shown up when it counts. She did not mean holidays, didn't mean birthdays. She was referring to hospital visits, roof repairs, doctor bills, and other topics that are rarely discussed on social media. Frank's GoFundMe pages keep sprouting up. Different names and lies. Same thing, please. They would be flagged within a week. He would try again. People gradually caught on. Nobody disseminated the links anymore. Aunt Rose ceased attempting to mediate. Lily told me she had a complete meltdown after her HOA fined her for speaking loudly on her front porch. I guess she found a new cause. Lily made one visit before moving for Texas. She brought me a framed copy of our group chat snapshot, the one where I was thrown out, and then proved everyone wrong. Caption, #1 receipt. It hung right next to my desk. My parents wrote me a note on my birthday. I typed formal chili. "We're sorry you were wounded by our actions. We hope that someday you will be able to let go of your anger and rejoin with your family." I did not answer, did not burn it, and simply shredded it. There are no theatrics. I checked on the old neighborhood once again. The house looked the same. Faded siding, overgrown lawn, and 2 broken porch lights. Sadness that is all too familiar. I did not knock, nor did I simply continue driving. Lily sent a snapshot the day she departed. 1 luggage, 1 bag, and 1 ticket. Caption. We're leaving behind the noise. I didn't respond, simply sent a red checkmark. She received it. By April, the business had 3 clients and a consistent cash flow. I've hired a part-time assistant, a student from a vocational school. Smart. I did not ask foolish questions. I paid him weekly. Arrived on time. I did not complain. Frank learned he had lost his tire shop employment. 3 missed calls and no-shows in 1 week. The manager informed Grandma that he had just vanished. No explanation or warning. He appeared outside my building once. Hoodie, hands, and pockets are phony. I'm currently in the region. Look, security has buzzed me. I instructed them to send him away. He departed without saying anything. Lily submitted her final update from Texas. Settled. Class is difficult. Freedom is superior. I responded. Solid. Don't look back. She provided a snapshot of her front door. Simple, quiet, and clean. No drama on the porch, no yelling behind the walls. In June, my company reached its first milestone. We broke even. All bills are paid. There are no debts or favors owed. I celebrated by replacing the old sofa. The one I slept on after working double shifts to cover my parents' rent. New ones are bigger and more comfortable. Mine. I did not make a post about it. I didn't send photos. I sat down and turned up the volume. Last I heard, Frank had moved in with a buddy of a friend. Crashed on their couch. No employment. No strategy. Still blaming everyone except the man in the mirror and my parents. They continue to convince anybody who listens that I have changed. They're correct. I changed the lock, the number, and my priorities. This is what occurs when you stop allowing people to deplete you. You get lighter, while others get louder. However, noise has never built anything. Work was done. 6 months later, everything had changed. Not in a cheesy, look how far I've come type of manner. Just actual change. Quiet and steady, the kind you don't share because you're too busy living it. The raise came through. Then a promotion. I relocated to a nicer apartment closer to the city. No neighbors, no noise, and no guilt reverberating through the walls. I didn't tell anyone. No Instagram tour or announcement. It's just keys, boxes, and stillness. Grandma found out, as she always does. She helped to hang the drapes and left a new coffee machine on the counter. No more weak mornings, she remarked, stroking the object as if it were holy. I received an official company memo. Frank's harassment complaint was dropped. No evidence. All ties led back to his IP. I printed a copy, put it in a folder called Stupid, and forgot about it. I ran across him again in the most unexpected spot. Tire business located off the highway. He was lugging carts and appeared to have not slept for a week. I needed my tires rotated. He did not identify my automobile at first. When he spotted me through the glass, he froze, didn't wave, didn't say anything, just stood there with that same false strong guy face he used to put on when we were kids, and he was caught lying. I paid, took the receipt, and then left. Lily texted me 1 hour later. He said, "You looked smug?" I said, "Wasn't." She got into graduate school in Texas on a full scholarship, and she's staying with a friend until she finds a home. She remarked, "You're the reason I didn't become one of them." I told her, "You chose that yourself." Nah, you lighted the spark. My parents tried phoning again in January. There were no voicemails, only desperate silence that smelt like guilt. Uncle Wes delivered a final message. "They say you abandoned your family." I did not. "I escaped," I said. He overheard it, never text again. Reynolds, my former high school teacher, emailed me. "I saw your name in an alumni write-up. I'm glad someone turned out normal." "Thank you," I said. "Still repairing automobiles?" "Nope. Something is currently being built." He replied with a thumbs-up emoji. That was it. I established my own business the next month. Logistics, contracts, and consultancy. Most people found it boring, but I didn't. Grandma paid the down payment. "You're the only one who ever showed up," she told me. She did not mean birthdays. She was referring to actual expenses such as hospital stays, doctor bills, and roof repairs. Frank's GoFundMe pages keep sprouting up. New names, same lies. They would be flagged within a week. Someone would report them before I ever noticed them. People were catching on. Aunt Rose eventually gave up pretending to be neutral. Lily told me she melted down when her HOA fined her for ranting on the porch. Lily stopped responding to her. Before departing for Texas, Lily stopped over and brought a framed copy of the group chat snapshot, in which Frank boasted about me being a dog on a leash. She'd captioned it, "Receipt number 1." It hung next to my desk. My birthday arrived. My parents wrote me a typed letter that read, "We're sorry you were hurt by our actions. We hope you can let go of your anger and reunite with your family someday." I didn't burn it. I did not read it twice. Instead, I shredded it. There's no drama. I stopped into the old neighborhood once to get Grandpa's toolbox from the garage. I did not call ahead or knock. I simply stepped in, took it, and left. As I strolled back to my car, Frank stood at the upstairs window, arms folded like a dollar store Bond villain. I didn't come outside, didn't say anything, just watched. 3 days later, Lily provided another screenshot. Frank shared his story. "Sometimes those closest to you are the ones that leave you bleeding." Nobody responded. Grandma came by again, leaving leftovers in a little tin box. "This was your uncle's. He wants you to get it." But within, there was a handwritten note. "There's usually one kid who does everything correctly, yet is nonetheless considered as an outcast. Don't allow this keep you stuck. Leave your guilt behind." I tacked it to the refrigerator next to my rent receipt. The irony did not miss me. Later that week, legal sent me an email. Case closed. Cease and desist is acknowledged. You are clear. I replied, all debts are paid. I then erased Frank's phone number, then my parents', and finally Aunt Rose's. I blocked everyone who crossed the line. No second warnings. That night, I prepared dinner in quiet. We ate in solitude. No fear, no wrath, just silence. That was new. 6 months have passed. Clients stacked up. Revenue is stable. I replaced the old couch on which I had slept when I was 18 years old and paying rent. The new one was bigger and comfier. Mine. I didn't post a picture. Did not send a snap. Just sat down on it. Leaned back and turned up the volume. Last I heard, Frank had moved in with a strange friend. Couch surfing. No job. Still pointing fingers. My parents are still telling anyone who listens that I have changed, and they're correct. I replaced the locks. Changed the number. Changed the dang rules. My wife slapped me before I could speak after her sister lied about me. Now her family's reputation is collapsing under the truth they ignored. It began like any other day. I was listening to the radio in the kitchen. The morning sun streamed in as I swung a spoon into my coffee. I had just brought back fresh bread and Claire's favorite almond milk from the shop. Without thinking, I sang an old song. Life seemed routine and easy, and then all of a sudden it wasn't. The door opened, and I heard it. As usual, I assumed it was Morgan, Claire's sister, stopping by without warning. Morgan had a habit of entering our house as if she were a renter. I didn't mind that she didn't look me in the eye most of the time. For the sake of Claire, I put up with her. She was apprehensive and wide-eyed though, and her energy was unusual that morning. Claire was standing behind her, her face tense as though someone had just passed away. With my coffee cup still warm in my fingers, I carefully turned around, prepared to greet the dawn. However, I never had the opportunity. In 7 words, Morgan stated, "Elias got me pregnant." As simple as that. Her mouth quivered like an unrehearsed play and her voice broke. I was still. The air was still. I opened my mouth but nothing came out. I didn't answer because my brain couldn't believe this was true, not because I felt guilty. Was this some sort of joke? Claire asked me no questions. In my opinion, she didn't look for the truth. She twisted her face in disdain. Her first action was to slap me. The mug fell out of my fingers and shattered on the tile floor as her palm struck my cheek with such force that my head wrenched sideways. I didn't even touch my face with my hand. I was too shocked because the lady I loved had changed into a stranger in front of my eyes. Not because it hurt. I croaked, finding my voice at last. "Claire. What on earth are you?" However, her brothers barged in as though they had been waiting outside before I could finish. With their linebacker physiques, Caleb and Marco were constantly trying to prove themselves. They made no inquiries. Like a stray dog slogging in dirt on white carpets, they simply seized me by the arms and pulled me through the house. I was still in my old t-shirt, still barefoot, and still attempting to process what had just transpired. I mumbled, "Get your hands off me." But my voice was faint. They weren't paying attention. Caleb unexpectedly hit me in the stomach after we were outside. I saw stars as Marco pushed me so hard into the fence. I didn't defend myself. I have no idea why. Perhaps I ought to have. Perhaps I ought to have screamed, called them out, or punched them, but I refrained from doing so. Windows were peered at by neighbors. It was filmed by someone across the street. Just before Caleb spat at my feet and said, "You sick freak," I saw the sparkle of a phone camera. My vision dimmed, but not from pain but rather from embarrassment. A shame that was forced into my throat even though it wasn't mine. I was left alone, humiliated, and injured by them. I went outdoors but Claire didn't follow. She did not ask if I was able to stand. With her arms folded and her wedding ring still on her hand, she stood in the doorway as if it held significance. She seemed as though she had already buried me in her thoughts with a mixture of hurt and certainty. I hobbled over to the street's edge. My phone kept buzzing. Messages from folks I hadn't communicated with in several months. I didn't answer any calls. I was at a loss for words. Hey, amusing thing. It seems that I had already been tried and found guilty before my wife's sister accused me of something heinous. I packed a bag and headed back inside. I didn't try to explain or say goodbye. What was the purpose? The truth was not what they desired. They were looking for someone to blame. You believe that love equates to protection, so you spend your life creating a home. However, if it's simpler than asking difficult questions, people will turn against you. I looked down at my shaking hands and then at the broken mug on the floor. I was covered in blood. I couldn't tell from the punches or the broken ceramic, it made no difference. After taking a shower, I put a towel around my ribs and used soap to write the words, "You didn't even ask," on the bathroom mirror before leaving. No yelling, no spectacular departure. Just a guy leaving the life he believed to be true with a broken jaw and a hollow heart. I simply knew that I couldn't stay, but I had no idea where I was heading. It's funny because you believe you'll realize when your life starts to fall apart. It only took a lie and a smack, but perhaps there will be sirens or some internal alert. A portion of me was murdered by that smack, and it didn't only hit my face. It said that if you stay long enough to hear the truth, it will release you. I went to a tiny public library 2 days after I departed to check my email. Just attempting to update passwords, cancel subscriptions, and access my accounts. Nothing major. Then I noticed that it was from my company, and that the subject line read, "Notice of Administrative Leave." I read the message 3 times while sitting in that rigid wooden chair with my hood down. The words remained the same. The board has decided it is in the company's best interest to initiate a separation process pending a formal investigation, given the serious allegations circulating online. What allegations? I hadn't made any posts. Other than a motel owner who only cared if my card swiped and a gas station clerk, I hadn't spoken to anyone. However, the rumors had gained traction. I checked social media, which I don't often use. A thread was there were enough hints for anyone who knew us, but no names. Justice, treachery, pregnancy, scandal, married guy, and sister-in-law. Posts containing ambiguous charges, out-of-context quotes, and individuals expressing their thoughts as though they were eyewitnesses. There are men like this everywhere, he is deserving of decay. Why don't more women have credibility? Trash. It was similar to witnessing my own funeral online, where the attendees flung stones rather than flowers. It was just rubbish. My landlord texted me on the 3rd day saying, "Hey man, I'm sorry, just business, but the other tenants are worried." I looked at my phone for a while before typing, "No problem. Because I need you to leave by the end of the week." I said I'll be gone today. And I did. I didn't fight, plead or request more time to clarify. Now I got it. The truth is irrelevant when you're accused of something heinous, especially if you're a man. When people are choosing a side, they typically go with the one that makes them feel good about themselves. The speed at which someone becomes invisible will astound you. I used to go to the bakery down the street every morning. Mrs. Ingram, the proprietor, was a kind elderly woman who used to smile as she handed me my coffee. She froze in mid-pour as I stepped in one morning. 3 people were behind me when she murmured, "We're closed today," after glancing at me, and then down at the counter. "That's him," a woman at the corner table muttered, and I left without a word. My phone was essentially worthless by day 5. I was blocked by Claire. Margot, her mother, and all of our friends had also done so. From my connections, even people I hardly knew disappeared. They seemed to be afraid that the rumor might spread to them. During a heat wave, I once assisted Margot in moving a whole patio set. She referred to me as the family's most trustworthy man. "Some men are wolves in family clothing," she wrote in a Facebook post on blood betrayal. Wolves. I had lost my humanity. Following the slap, the beating and the embarrassment, I had remained silent. However, something little and final snapped inside me when I read that. In order to protect myself, I wanted to yell, fight back, post screenshots, texts, voicemails and everything else. But since I had nothing to prove, I had nothing. There were no covert encounters, no flirtations, and no proof because the alleged incident never occurred. However, there was no need for proof. There was greater excitement in the lie. That night, I got a call from a college friend. He was among the few people who hadn't abandoned me yet. With caution he said, "Hey man. I don't want to bother you, but did you actually?" I ended the call before he could finish. I didn't want to speak with him again if he had to ask after 10 years of knowing me. I stayed at a budget motel close to the city's perimeter. Hours passed while I gazed at the discolored ceiling, my thoughts racing like a broken fan. How could a man's entire life be destroyed by a single sentence? I reflected on the times I had spent so openly sharing. I arrived early for family gatherings. After Claire's cousin moved, I made him some furniture. Morgan told me I missed a screw as she looked through her phone while I assisted her in installing a bookshelf. I was now a phantom in everyone's mind. They could despise and forgive this nightmare version of me. There was only a tale, no trial, no court date, and no report. Once established, it required only whispers, rather than sunlight. It had nothing to do with fairness. It was more about passing judgment and appearing to believe women than it was about learning the truth. Morgan also did a good job in her role. A friend of a friend told me that she was getting gifts as a token of sorrow. People praised her bravery as they checked in. I felt like throwing up when I saw the word survivor on her social media bio. I wasn't even texted by Claire. Not once. I discovered that I couldn't afford to remain where I was for much longer after looking at my bank account. The employer froze my severance pay. Rumors of legal action circulated. For what purpose? I had no idea. That's when I started to feel afraid. It's the dread of forgetting, not the fear of hatred. A name that conveyed only embarrassment. That night I hardly recognized the man staring back at me in the mirror. There were patches in my beard. I had lifeless eyes. It made me seem bad. That scared me because I wondered what the outside world thought of me if I looked that way to myself. You believe that everything goes wrong at once. It doesn't. Layer by layer, it gradually becomes apparent that no one is coming to your aid. You will need to change completely if you wish to live. I bought a one-way ticket, sold the rest, and packed a little suitcase. There is no forwarding address. No logical destination. Only a short distance away, from the slap, from the lie, and from those who allowed it to spread like wildfire as I stood in the center, blazing. It's time to let go when even your name starts to seem burdensome. I entered a tiny travel agency that morning that was sandwiched between a pawn store and a laundromat. As if it hadn't been rung in years, the bell above the door jangled. Behind the counter a young woman raised her head from a crossword problem. To where? She inquired. I paused. Anywhere but here, I muttered. She chuckled as though I were kidding, but I wasn't. I required a ticket, guidance and an opportunity to vanish. I was riding a bus to a town I couldn't pronounce by the end of the day. My old laptop, 2 changes of clothes, a pair of boots, and a brown leather notebook full of journal entries, sketches and mementos of the man I once was were all in a duffel bag with a fictitious name. It was a long, silent ride. I watched the scenery shift from my seat toward the rear. A shoreline that seemed to go on forever was followed by forests, barren pastures, and city buildings. I stopped keeping track of the hours at some point. I didn't get any sleep. I ate very little. I merely gazed and pondered. It's peculiar. Peace isn't the quiet that descends after your life blows up. Not initially. The fog is numb. Confusion and remorse can reverberate more loudly when there is no sound. I mentally relived the slap, the lie, and how quickly everyone turned away, as if they had been waiting for an excuse to despise me. I pondered whether they recognized something in me before I did. Did I seem too calm, too helpful, or too forgetful? Easy to forget was the final notion that stuck out the most. By the time I reached my destination, the fog outside had increased. On a small coastal route, the bus was one of only 2 cars. I didn't mind when the driver stated, "Last stop," as he pulled into a dirt lot. It was a little, isolated location without cell towers, just wooden buildings that hadn't been painted since the 1980s, an inn that functioned as a diner, and a bay with ancient boats chained like sleeping dogs. Trying not to attract notice, I carried my duffel bag over my shoulder as I strolled through the town. On a porch, a man smoking a cigarette was repairing a net. He saw me walk by and nodded. I returned the nod. I asked the innkeeper if they rented rooms weekly. After giving me a thorough examination, she stated, "Cash only." I gave her money for the first 2 weeks and inquired if she knew anyone in need of assistance. "It depends on the type of assistance," she stated. I answered, "Anything that keeps me moving." She pointed across the harbor. "Try the dock." Ben, an elderly guy, employs people to clean his equipment. Ben made no inquiries. He simply gave me gloves and gestured toward a pile of fishing nets that had a salty, rotten scent. For the first time in weeks, no one stared, no one murmured, and no one passed judgment when I arrived at work. I was just a man with gloves and a duty. I toiled till my hands grew raw, and my back ached. After that, I went back to my room, lay down on the thin mattress, and gazed at the ceiling till I fell asleep. My new routine was that: work, wake up, and sleep in Washington. Nothing except fog, salt, perspiration, and silence. No news, no updates, no internet. And that was sufficient for a time. I kept my true name a secret. My name was Ford. It felt easier and cleaner. No one inquired, and I didn't bring up my background. On few evenings I strolled down the beach. I let the wind to numb my face as I inhaled the chilly air. On other evenings, I jotted down notes. Not whole entries, just snippets. One word. A sentence. Or an idea. I didn't want to recall at times. My goal was to rebuild. People began to recognize me in town. Not the traditional manner. Simple welcomes, no whispering, no sympathy. Good morning, Ford. Are you on duty at the West Dock today? You take coffee with sugar or cream? They only wanted me there, not my narrative. It was also novel. I discovered more room in my head the more I kept to myself. I started going for a morning run. A few minutes at first, then 30 minutes, and finally 5 Fords. The agony was pleasant. It was logical. My legs trembled and my lungs burned, but I chose to endure the pain. A battle for meaning. A few months later, I started repairing the town's damaged gutters, sheds, and boats. June, a woman, contacted me to assist her in updating her company website. She persisted even after I informed her I wasn't a big techie. I was able to figure it out after watching videos, reading forums, and using a laptop that I borrowed from the library. One shopkeeper then requested for assistance, followed by another. Something had changed, but I was unaware of it at the time. I chose to be invisible this time. I was no longer the accused Elias. I was Ford, the man who had time, tools, and no trail to follow. After work one evening, I watched the boat sway beneath a deep blue sky from the pier. Like a hidden mirror, the water reflected the stars as they started to emerge. Claire was on my mind. I pondered whether she regretted it or missed me. But since it no longer mattered, I ignored the thought. This moment, this silence, this new me being forged from the ruins of my former self, that was what mattered. Just fog, salt, and silence. No headlines. No group conversations, no slaps, no screaming, and the methodical, gradual transformation into a person that no one could take away. The name Ford was no longer merely a ruse, it turned into a start. At first I didn't have a compelling justification for choosing it. In a charity container near the pier, I discovered an old work shirt with simply the name on it. Blue cotton with faded characters. It had been sewn long before I did. I never corrected the villagers when they began to call me by that name. It's funny how identity can develop from nothing. I wasn't just getting by the end of my first year in that port town shrouded in fog. I was reviving, slowly and cautiously. That winter Ben, the sour old fisherman who initially hired me, suffered a stroke. Clara, his daughter, returned to aid in his recuperation. She didn't smile much and was stern and sensible, which I liked. She said, "You're good with numbers, right?" One evening as we were closing the nest shed, I gave a shrug. "Decent." She threw a notebook smeared with salt on the table. Ben's inventory was a jumble, half scrawled, half remembered. Try making sense of that. I spent the night gathering receipts, redoing his books, and sorting out fishing permits that had expired. I gave Clara a tidy spreadsheet and a basic digital ledger the following morning. Her gaze expanded. "You completed this in a single night." I gave a nod. She gazed at the display. "Have you ever considered doing something other than cleaning nets?" In actuality, I had considered it in private throughout the dark hours of restless evenings. I had always been interested in coding, but I had never had to depend on it. I was too busy in my previous life as the trustworthy spouse, the gutter-fixing son-in-law, and the employee who kept everything going but never lifted his hand. But I had time here. It was time to construct something that belonged to myself. I registered the domain amrayafest.com that evening. Just enough to commemorate the initials I left behind and the man I aspired to be, but not my true name. I began modestly by creating websites for nearby companies, such as a cafe, a flower shop, and a boat rental agency. My face was hidden from the clients. They made no inquiries, they simply enjoyed the outcome. I rented a tiny workshop on the outskirts of town as cash came in. The windows were dusty and the floorboards were ancient. I purchased a fan heater, a kettle, a folding desk, and a used PC. It was mine. Even though it wasn't fancy. I was reminded that I was still here, still capable, and still building with each screw I inserted into the wall. I became the unofficial IT man for the entire coastal strip without any prior arrangement. Word got out. When he arrived, a man from 2 towns over needed assistance starting an internet business to sell his handcrafted furniture. A former educator desired to launch a blog. A young mother desired to create a website with recipes. I never refused. I wasn't cheap. I was fair. People made their payments on schedule. They never inquired, "Where are you from?" and instead handed me stories, bread and coffee. I wasn't sure whether they were being courteous or if they acknowledged that I was now one of them. The company expanded in silence. I developed a distinct brand. I also printed A.M. Reeves Tech on the back of the bibs of the competitors and sponsored a little local event. I once showed a new digital system I had created to assist in tracking public repairs during a town council meeting. Previously erased, Elias Ford is now being praised in front of a room full of strangers who are unaware of the controversy that once killed me. As the sun sank behind the cliffs, I left the meeting and made my way to the harbor's edge. Like melting gold, the water shone. After removing my shoes, I stood in the sand and let my toes to be touched by the tide. And I sobbed because I had accomplished what I believed was impossible, not because I was sad. I created a version of myself that no one could deny, misrepresent, or ruin. A man with only a present he was at last permitted to possess and no past. However, there was a whisper of the past with each step ahead. The smack, Tessa's expression, and the way her brothers hauled me out like trash are all things I occasionally dream about. I would wake up with my pulse pounding and sweating, half expecting to see a throng outside holding torches made of memories or a notice beneath my door. However, nobody showed up. In actuality, humans don't pursue ghosts, and I had voluntarily chosen to become one. I did not, however, divulge my secrets. The notebook in which I used to write about suffering had changed. Plans, wireframes, and checklists were now stored there. I always carried a small USB drive that was taped with old black tape inside its back cover. It contained the recording I got 6 months after going missing, which was sent by a mutual acquaintance who was unaware of the seriousness of what they were sending. Morgan's voice, mocking, confessing, laughing. I informed them that he did it because I detested their perception of his perfection. He treated me as if I were unimportant. I turned him into nothing then. I gave it a listen once. I did not scream or cry. I simply listened. I then supported it. I secured it. I held it tight. Not to exact revenge, but to demonstrate that I hadn't dreamed it. One envious woman's falsehood caused the globe to twist in unexpected directions. Healing is not as simple as you may imagine. I didn't yell into the wind or stand atop a mountain. I didn't write angry letters or punch walls. I simply created one system, one website, and one silent triumph at a time. I got 2 locals to assist me. I gave them flexible hours and a good wage. The only thing I had to say when people asked what drove me was, I know what it feels like to have your life ripped away. So, I'm trying to build one no one can take. I occasionally heard a voice that sounded like Tessa's coming from a stranger. Or the name Morgan would make me freeze. However, both the town and I moved on. It was like taking back a piece of myself to fix every cable, assist with digitizing every boat, and fix every broken login. Ford is a new man, not the old me. I just responded to my own reflection this time. The sound is the first thing I recall. It wasn't just any knock. It felt like someone smashing fists against a wall, frantic and desperate. As I negotiated arrangements for a long-term upgrade, my hands froze on the keyboard. Even though the cursor flickered, I got to my feet. I took one look out the window. Sheets of rain fell, furious and heavy. The streets became rivers. As I got closer to the entrance, I heard thunder crack overhead. There were 3 more bangs. A familiar voice sounded muffled. On the knob, my hand hesitated. After more than 3 years, I finally heard the name. Elias, please. The voice cracked, trembling under strain. It was raw and worn out, but it was definitely hers. Claire. I opened the door gently because I had no idea what was behind it. Not because I was unsure. This is what I had envisioned. Not frequently, but frequently enough to demonstrate how much her ghost's presence in my past was essential to my recovery. She was drenched, her hair stuck to her face, and her eyes were wide with sorrow and remorse. She held herself together by putting her arms around herself. Please, she said in a tremulous voice. I know you're in there. I didn't respond. As the storm roared, we simply gazed at one another. She seemed so little, and I remembered how I used to have hurried to take her inside, dry her hair, and cover her with a blanket. However, that man was no longer at home. She extended her hand and touched the doorframe. She said, I've been trying to find you. For years. Without surprise but without faith, I arched an eyebrow. I moved out of the way. After hesitating, she entered the house as if she were returning to a place that had forgotten her scent. It was a clean, warm room. Now, all I had was a desk, a couch, and a few framed pictures of sunrises from my runs. I had no ties to anyone except myself. She was standing clumsily in the center, spilling rainfall on the ground. How did you come across me? I asked bluntly. She turned her head away. Time was needed. Numerous dead ends. I needed to hire someone. I needed to try when I understood the truth. I closely observed her, putting her statements to the test. She nodded, her eyes starting to well up but holding back. I came not to quarrel. You had to come visit me. I had to give an explanation. After walking to my workstation, I took out a tiny USB drive. I had never before shown anyone the proof. I gave it to her and muttered, "I already know everything." She gazed at it as if it were going to burn her. "What is it?" Even though she already knew, she asked. "Take it. Play it now. Come back tomorrow if you would still like to discuss after that." After a moment of hesitation, she nodded and received it with quivering fingers. I went back to my workstation, took a seat, and concentrated on the screen. She vanished in an instant. I heard her sneakers sloshing in the rain and the door closing. The wind seemed to want in as well, pressing against the glass. Then there was quiet. For hours, I sat in the silence. I didn't look at the time or my phone. As the storm subsided into a gentle rain, I simply gazed out the window. I didn't get any sleep that night. Staring at the ceiling, I laid on the couch. I considered every life I had led since that slap. Since her silence became more audible than the lie, and since her brothers brutally abused me. What was she hoping to discover here? A dude in the waiting room? A heart that remained pliable? Is a soul still open? I had no idea. However, I was aware that I was no longer her spouse. Not in a spiritual, emotional, or legal sense. The following morning was shrouded in fog. I didn't check my email or go out. I waited for nothing until I noticed her while sipping a mug of black coffee beside the window. This time, she didn't knock. Like a kid waiting for punishment, she sat on the porch bench with her hands clasped and her head bent. When she noticed me, she looked up. She had a new face. Something had changed. The conflict was over, but so were the tears. The aching was all that was left. She claimed to have played it. I gave a nod. She took a deep breath. I remained silent. "I destroyed you." I held up a hand and said, "Elias, I didn't know." She blinked quickly, attempting to contain the deluge she hadn't earned the right to let out. "You don't have to say it." "Do you despise me?" Her voice cracked as she asked. I gazed out across the placid ocean. "No," I replied. "Hatred requires energy. I have run out of things to offer you." She fell to the ground. I didn't move or make contact. I simply walked by her. In 20 minutes, I had a client meeting. Because life had moved on, I was awarded one of the largest contracts I had ever received. I had too. The following day she returned. She didn't knock this time. She simply watched my workshop from the other side of the street while she tried to find the confidence to enter. While I was updating a cybersecurity patch for a client's database, I managed to see her through the blinds. Her presence no longer unnerved me, so I continued typing and working. Nothing was stirred. Curiosity. Like watching a storm pass over a mountain you've already climbed, but without anger or longing. The bell above the door sounded softly as she entered at last. "You're occupied," she remarked. Without glancing up, I answered, "I'm always busy." She took another step inside and shut the door. The scent of rain-soaked cloth and ocean mist filled the air. Her voice seemed smaller, as if the years abroad had sapped her confidence, and she was still wearing the same coat from yesterday. "I didn't sleep," she muttered. All I gave her was the faint hum of the office heater and the sound of fingers on keyboard. She approached the edge of my desk and waited for me to raise my head. She said, "I have something to say." I nodded and leaned back. She muttered more to herself than to me, and I was unaware that she was recording it. I didn't think Morgan would come clean. "But," I said, "she did." Claire replied, the words sticking in her mouth. "Yes." Calmly, I informed her. "I knew 2 years ago." She blinked at that. "What?" She staggered back as if I had smacked her with the stillness she had once used as a weapon. "I knew 2 years ago about the lie, the recording, about everything. But you didn't say a word." "No, I didn't." "Why?" she inquired, truly taken aback. I answered, "Because the truth wouldn't change what you did. It would not reverse the slap or take away your brother's criminal behavior of dragging me across the grass. The weeks I spent hiding from a world that spit on me for something I didn't do would not be made better by it. So I said nothing. I wanted to know what mattered more to you. My quiet or your guilt." She covered her mouth, appearing nauseous. Her legs were shaking as I could see. "If I had known, I would have arrived sooner." I interrupted. "But you didn't want to know. You keep omitting that section. You didn't ask. You had no doubts. You didn't flinch at all. Before I could say anything else, you picked her over me. With her face pallid and her shoulders slumped, she took a seat in the chair across from me. She sobbed. Eliasni, she responded. Morgan sobbed. She also said that you hatefully gazed at her. That she was cornered by you. That she was unable to say no. I squinted. And you decided I deserved to be ruined based on that alone. I was afraid, she said abruptly. I was unsure of what to believe. She sounded so broken by the way she said it. So did I remarked icily. She parted her lips, then shut them. She did not cry, but her eyes glistened. I remarked, you didn't return for the truth. You lost everything else, so you returned. That made her wince. It touched down. Leaning forward, I spoke evenly. I am aware of your divorce. I am aware that your family betrayed you. I am aware that your mother referred to it as an old scandal and advised you to move on. I am aware that Marco's business failed after Caleb was exposed for that incident at the school. I know since I didn't say anything. And the truth had time to gain traction on its own while I remained silent. Her lips quivered, but she remained silent. I went on, you didn't return out of regret. You needed something to feel clean again, so you came back. No, she muttered. That isn't accurate. It is, I said. And it's all right. It doesn't make me angry. Simply put, I'm not providing you what you came for. She appeared perplexed. What do you suppose I was here to do? Redeeming? I said. Closure? Perhaps even forgiveness. I hesitated, allowing our silence to deepen. However, you are unaware that I have long since forgiven you. For my sake, not yours. I was forced to. I wouldn't have made it through otherwise. However, forgiving does not imply reconciliation. It doesn't mean welcome. I simply stopped acting as though I was responsible for your conduct. Claire put her hands over her face and her shoulders trembled. She simply sat there for a moment, allowing herself to be vulnerable in front of me. There was just a lady buried behind the debris of her own choices, no makeup, no audience, no show. Her voice was softer than I had ever heard it when she eventually turned back to face me. Do you think this can ever be fixed? I cocked my head in an honest, not irate manner. No, I replied. Slowly, she nodded. I understand, she muttered. I'm worthy of that. I uttered the words. No one deserves to be lied about like I was. However, mistakes are made by humans. The issue is that you created yours and left me to foot the bill. We remained seated for an additional minute. Only space, breath, and all the unseen things that had existed between us for too long were left. No more words. At last she fixed her coat and stood up. I'm going now, she declared. I gave a nod. Look after yourself. She glanced back one more time before opening the door. She said, I hope you find happiness. I have already, I answered. And I meant it. She went out. The man who had survived both said, just the truth and silence. No more begging, no more promises, no more twisted stories. How long she stayed on my porch the following day is unknown to me. However, she was already sitting on the bench with her back straight and her hands clutched in her lap like a child awaiting judgment when I eventually went outside. She first ignored me in favor of concentrating on the gravel path that led from my feet to the road. The morning air was cold from the mist of the night as I stood in the doorway. Overhead birds were chirping. The town was just starting to wake up, with early morning joggers and a few dock workers calling hello over the lake. But the only sound I could hear was our stillness. Once a source of comfort, that old familiar silence now hung taut between two rocks like a wire. Something was gone from her eyes when she eventually looked up. Pride, perhaps. Perhaps the final fragment of the tale she had attempted to preserve in her memory. She answered, I listened to it. I didn't answer. I kept listening to her voice. What frightened me the most was that it didn't sound like her. Her voice cracked, but she didn't cry. Not now. I didn't recognize that version of Morgan. I never wanted to see it, or perhaps it was the only authentic version. I entered the porch but chose not to sit. I owed her no consolation. I simply had to give myself closure. Claire mutely remarked. She was laughing, as she gazed at the wooden floor. Just laughing as if she had done the world's most ingenious trick. That's what it was to her, so I nodded slowly. Her face, God, her face, carried years when she finally turned to face me. She swallowed a falsehood so deeply that it became a part of her after years of denial. And now the truth had sliced through that deception. Scar tissue was all that remained. She claimed she did it because you treated her as though she didn't exist. She was upset that I didn't want her to notice me. She mistook basic decency for rejection, I replied plainly. Because I wasn't what she needed to feel special, she intended to punish me. Claire shut her eyes. She also detested me. You know, she said, I think that's what I didn't want to believe. It wasn't just about you. It was about both of us. What we had, and what we meant to her. Possibly, I replied. But that doesn't change what she did, or what you did after. She groaned. I caught sight of her. She inhaled slowly, feeling her chest lift. Whispering, I keep wondering. Her cheeks flushed. That was the question, wasn't it? I could tell by the way she asked it that she already knew the answer. If she hadn't confessed, if that recording hadn't been made, would I have ever seen it? Would I have had to live with the version of you that she painted in my mind? The one that I helped make real? She didn't dispute, saying, I recall, in a firmer voice. The day it all happened. You returned because the illusion fell apart, I said. Not because you were looking for the truth. But simply because you had nothing else to cling to. I keep reliving it in my head. You had coffee in your hand. I didn't see that at the time, but you were composed, and perplexed. I just realized, I had a challenge to tackle. And the issue was, you. There's something people don't understand about betrayal. I continued slowly, glancing out toward the dock, where the sea shimmered in the early sun. It's not just the lie. Even the slap isn't it. It's the velocity. The speed at which someone finds you guilty. How quickly they discard everything that you have ever been to them. That's what breaks you. She nodded while letting the tears fall down her cheeks without wiping them away. I didn't correct her or comfort her. She added, I ruined you. Again, barely audible. Sometimes people need to sit in the mess they made. She went on. I kept telling myself that maybe it wasn't as horrible as it felt, that maybe it was just an error. But everything I had put in place to defend myself was destroyed when I heard her voice mocking and expressing pride in what she had done. I'm not here to fix anything, she continued. I know that's not possible. And she stood slowly, as though the weight of her confession was pressing against her joints. Nor am I here to beg for your pardon. I'm not worthy of it. After listening to that recording, all I needed to do was look you in the eye to let you know that I now knew. I really looked at her, and what I saw was not the woman I had once loved. The wife who had snuck her cold feet under my legs at night or laughed at my poor cooking, who had died the same day the lie was born, but a stranger who had, as she herself claimed, walked through fire and come out burned, but perhaps at last honest. She nodded and said, I know. She exited the porch and glanced around once. For what it's worth, I hope the life you built now gives you peace. There's nothing left to rebuild, I answered. I let her name linger for a moment before answering. It does. And then I stepped back inside and shut the door behind me. Not in a resentful or angry manner, but simply because you deserve it, Elias. The tape showed what had always existed between us. Doubt, distance, the kind of love that crumbles under the first blow because it was never strong enough to survive honesty. I had survived it without her, without all of them. Sometimes the only way to reclaim your name is to stop asking others to spell it correctly. There would be no rekindled love, no dramatic apologies, and no hugs in the rain. However, Claire stayed, not in my house, not even on my street, but in the town, after renting a small place from the innkeeper who helped her settle in, and then from Clara at the net shed, who saw her buying groceries with unsteady hands. I had assumed that after the tape, after the final confrontation, that would be the last time I saw her. She didn't walk around with her head held high. There was no arrogance, just a stillness, as if someone was trying not to disturb the air. She started tutoring kids after school, volunteered at the town clinic and helped clean up the beach after storms. I didn't go looking or ask why she stayed, but I noticed. I watched from a distance, not because I was interested in her redemption story, but because I was trying to figure out why I wasn't angry anymore. The locals didn't know who she was to me at first, and she didn't tell them, but small towns have long memories and even longer whispers. A few people made the connection, even though she didn't ask to be close to me or knock again. Instead, she simply appeared in the world I had created, quietly, as if she knew she was walking through something delicate and sacred that wasn't hers. I always responded the same way. I can't take her away from me. They nodded, and that was all. She's just here. The memory of who she used to be briefly flashed through my mind when I saw her at the farmer's market one afternoon. She was carrying a bag of apples and laughing softly with one of the older women who sold honey. The sun caught her hair, and I nodded back. That was the new language between us. No words, no open wounds, just acknowledgement. It was like two travelers who once traveled the same path but now went in different directions. Weeks went by. Then months. She earned her place in the town, just like I had, by doing the work and not asking for anything. People started asking more about my business and less about her, and my clientele increased. I hired a third developer, upgraded my equipment, and even began giving talks about online resilience and digital identity at the local college. I never mentioned my past, but everything I said came from it. The answer always sat like a stone in my stomach. No, she wouldn't have. Her return wasn't born out of faith, rather, it was born out of fallout, and forgiveness, as much as people like to preach, doesn't make that go away. Still, in the silence of my evenings, I couldn't get rid of the ache of one question. Would she have come if Morgan hadn't confessed? I could forgive her for being human, for being naive, for making a decision under duress, but I couldn't forget that she let me fall first when everything fell apart, choosing to believe a lie over the man who had held her through her darkest moments, who had helped her mother when she broke her hip, who had used his fingers to trace maps on her back and his eyes closed to plan dreams. I no longer hated her, but I also lost trust in her, and trust was the one thing forgiveness couldn't restore. She came over to me as I was shutting up the workshop one evening when the sun was setting behind the lighthouse, the sky bruised purple, the waves softly lapping the dock. "Do you mind?" She pointed to the wooden bench by the stairs and said, "It's a public bench." She sat next to me, but not too close. I shrugged. I was surprised when she remarked, "I'm not trying to win you back." "I know," I said. "I just wanted to say thank you." "For what?" "For keeping my identity a secret from everyone." I glanced at her and realized for the first time that she wasn't here to be forgiven. Rather, she was here to bear the burden that she should have had long ago. "For allowing me to exist here without dragging your story behind me like chains." "I needed peace, which is why I kept it quiet for you," I added. She nodded, saying, "I never asked you that day when I slapped you, when it all started." She paused, trying to find the right words, then said, "What were you going to say before everything went sideways?" "Retelling the worst parts of my life to strangers doesn't bring that." "I was going to ask what the hell you were talking about," I replied, gazing out at the ocean. I felt it had to be a joke because it was so unexpected. I was taken aback. That's all. I was not even given the opportunity to defend myself. Claire averted her eyes in embarrassment, and I went on without posing a single query. "You struck me. You allowed them to pull me out. You allowed it to occur." "I know," she said in a whisper. I said, "And you've got to live with that, not because I intend for you to suffer but rather because it's the result. That is the result of decisions we are unable to reverse." We sat in quiet once more until she stood up as the sky grew darker. "This will be the last time I talk to you directly," she said. "I needed to say those things, but I'll respect the space you've created." "I do live with it," she continued. "Every day. I will not meddle." She paused, turned slightly, and grinned, saying, "Thank you." I nodded, and as she turned to leave, I added one last thing. "You're doing good work at the clinic." She then disappeared into the dusk haze, never to be seen again. As I sat on the bench and listened to the wind, the tide and the creak of the dock, I reflected on everything we had experienced. The lies, the fall, and the return. It dawned on me that closure doesn't come with big apology or tidy endings. Rather, it comes in bits and pieces, in nods across marketplaces, in shared silence, and in distance kept not out of rage, but out of knowledge. I never really wanted revenge. It's a messy word, bloated with bitterness, dripping with energy I no longer had to give. I didn't want to destroy anyone. I didn't want to make them hurt the way I had. I just wanted the truth to live. So I let it. Forgiveness can clear the air. But it doesn't rebuild bridges. Sometimes peace is just knowing you don't have to try anymore. I was at my desk drinking lukewarm coffee, browsing a forum on small business cybersecurity, when I noticed a trending article on one of the discussion boards. "False accusation ruins man's life until truth surfaces." It began on a calm Tuesday afternoon, when the fog had rolled in thickly over the docks, swallowing the horizon in a soft gray hush. It was my story, posted anonymously with no names or photos, just details, frightfully accurate ones, about a man who was accused by his sister-in-law of getting her pregnant, betrayed by his wife and family, beaten, fired, and shunned, only to disappear, start over, and later find out the whole accusation was false. I clicked it out of habit, but what I saw wasn't a coincidence. An audio file with Morgan's smug confession was attached at the bottom. "I told them he did it because I hated how perfect they thought he was," she said. Word for word, the exact file I had hidden away for more than 2 years. I didn't upload it, but I knew who did. Claire, who must have duplicated it after I gave her the original, perhaps as an attempt to make amends. He looked at me like I was nothing, so I turned him into nothing. Or perhaps she was no longer able to bear the burden by herself. In any case, it was now available on the internet, and could not be put back in its box. The news became viral in a matter of hours, and it was discussed on blogs and in forums. Whether it was real or false was up for debate in the comments, but it made little difference. The confession and the voice were genuine. It didn't take long for people to begin making connections. The murmurs came back, but not in my immediate vicinity. They encircled the individuals who had previously buried me this time. Elena lost her job at a medium-sized public relations business. In a public statement, its CEO said, "We do not tolerate any behavior that undermines the dignity of others." Within a week, she disappeared from social media. Former high school football coach and Tessa's brother Caleb resigned after an anonymous report claimed that he had previously engaged in physical assault based on unverified allegations. The footage of him pulling me outside by my collar was leaked. Like a curse, it reappeared. Margot, their mother, served on the board of a nearby non-profit organization that provided funding for women's shelters. Her public remarks, "Some men are wolves in family clothing," made prior to any investigation, were discovered by the board, and she was asked to resign. Despite never having seen a courtroom, they had to deal with a far harsher ruling. The court of public truth. There were no attorneys or gavels, just a reflection in a mirror of a world that had let them go and didn't want them back. And I said nothing. I did not affirm or deny, I didn't add gasoline or gloat. I simply continued to live, work, and create the life they believed they could destroy. People in town started to treat me with respect instead of sympathy. "I read something online," a single man remarked in the marina. "Didn't mention names, but if it's even half true, I'm sorry for what you went through." All I needed to do was nod. At the cafe, another woman put coffee and a croissant on my table and added, "On the house." Although there were no significant changes in my life, I did feel as though I was marching with the wind at my back, rather than against it. I saw Claire throughout this period, but she didn't talk to me. She continued to live a quiet life, work at the clinic, and keep her head down. I had no idea how it must have felt for her to see her family fall apart under the weight of the reality they had previously chosen to ignore. Despite having started the fire, she had not left. Without requesting pity, she stood in the ashes and allowed the smoke to burn her eyes. I admired that in a tiny, quiet manner. I got a letter in the mail one morning. Just text scribbled on pristine white paper, with no handwriting or return address. "You did it that way even though you didn't have to. Rather of using the truth as a weapon, you allow it to breathe. Thank you for not destroying us when you had every right to, even if I don't deserve your charity. Now I see that." And not because I needed to read it again, but rather to remind myself that sometimes justice doesn't come with fire. I folded the paper and put it in a drawer with the others. Quiet, indisputable truth can accompany it at times, and that's sufficient at times. Justice is frequently perceived as being noisy, requiring a stage, a verdict, and a standing audience. However, during those weeks, I discovered this. A whisper of justice can be heard. An online post. A recording was released. Just a nod from someone who was once skeptical of you. Not all justice results in punishment, sometimes it simply comes out. People are unable to turn away once it is shown. They must accept what they observe. Caleb, Margot, and Elena all experienced that. They were not imprisoned, they received no fine, but they were seen by everyone. They were seen by the truth. More significantly, they recognized themselves. A teenager, who appeared to be around 17, entered my studio one evening right before closing time. He was apprehensive and shifted uncomfortably. "The truth block was constructed by you?" he inquired. I scowled. "What?" "That story online, about the lie, and how the guy vanished but returned stronger," he muttered. "You mean that?" I didn't have to respond, but I didn't. Slowly, he nodded. "I simply wanted to mention how much that story aided me. This year I nearly gave up on myself. People believed that I had done something that I hadn't. I also began to believe it." He took out a drawing pad from his rucksack. "I was instructed by my teacher to sketch something that gave me strength once more. This is what I sketched." He showed me a page with a faceless man standing in a storm with his feet firmly planted and lightning behind him. As stated in the description, truth doesn't flinch. I looked at it for a while. "You hold on to that strength," I murmured, shaking his hand as I rose up. "Don't allow them to change who you are. He grinned as he went, and I took a seat behind my desk, feeling a peculiar sense of serenity. The reason I had never uploaded the recording myself suddenly occurred to me. The reason I waited. The reason I had rebuilt first. Because understanding what they did isn't the only thing that constitutes justice. It's about knowing who you are, regardless of what somebody may have said. People in our world can be divided into two categories. Those who choose who they become, and those who are shaped by their circumstances. I thought I was the first ones. I tried to be decent, trustworthy, and helpful back then. I believed that those around me would notice me if I loved deeply, gave generously, and forgave quickly enough. They would support me. However, they failed to hold out when the storm hit. I fell when they released me. The problem with falling, though, is that occasionally you hit something solid. Yourself. I still get up early these days. I enjoy the silence before the town awakens, not because I'm haunted anymore. As I patiently boil my coffee, I observe the fog rolling across the bay in the morning. I don't immediately check my phone. I don't follow the news or look through headlines. I sit, take a deep breath, and tell myself that making headlines is not the way to find peace. It comes without the necessity of being seen. Most mornings I choose to walk into town because I can. Not because I have to. These days, I get greetings from people that are carefree and judgment-free. I earned that, but it took years. I won't prove my innocence. Not by yelling my version of events. However, by leading a life that rendered the falsehood inconsequential. Sometimes I walk by the clinic and catch a glimpse of Claire through the window. Our eyes occasionally connect, and when they do, we both nod. No more, no less. She's generally hunched over a clipboard or caring for one of the town's kids. I appreciated her more for keeping her word than for offering an apology, since she never again crossed the line, spoke up, or attempted to change the truth. You can't outrun your mirror. Not forever. Morgan tried to reinvent herself, moved to a different place, and changed her name online. I know her family is now dispersed. Last I heard, Caleb works as a part-time teacher someplace. Margot travels most of the time, perhaps in search of locations where no one can identify her. I stayed, built, and now own 3 buildings in the town. A couple who were creating a podcast studio rented one, while a marine gear provider rented another. These days my tech company has clients in 6 countries and operates virtually exclusively online. I didn't have to heavily promote myself because the facts and the work spoke for themselves. Healing isn't loud, which is the part that no one tells you when your life is on fire. Banners, thunder, and cheering are not included. Healing is silent, discreet, and occurs in everyday situations, such as coding while drinking tea, choosing a new office chair, or assisting a stranger with carrying things upstairs. About a year after the tale became viral online, a local school contacted us one afternoon. They were planning a youth program on resilience and digital ethics. They requested me to speak because they had witnessed the life I created and believed it could motivate the children. Not because they were familiar with my narrative. Yes, I said, and a dozen young faces gazed up at me as I entered the room. Some were interested, some were bored, and some were excited. I told them about my adventure, cleaned of course, and without mentioning slander or treachery. I talked about making a fresh start, about losing everything and deciding to learn rather than give up. How do you stop being angry at the people who ruined your life? One child inquired. You don't, I responded with a smile. You just stop paying them rent in your mind. You no longer accept their behavior as a part of who you are. By creating a life that is too full for them to fit into, you outgrow their control over you. Perhaps he did, since he nodded as if he understood. Perhaps those remarks will mean something to him in the future. I had a cup of hot cider that evening and gazed up at the sky while standing on my porch. There were only stars, no clouds. 1,000 silent lights blinking above me, unconcerned with anything below. I reflected on the man I once was, the one who stood in his kitchen, coffee cup in hand, watching in disbelief as his life fell apart due to a sentence that someone else had made up. I no longer recognized him. He was too sensitive, too eager to please, and too ready to think that love was something that had to be gained rather than something that had to be achieved. And now? I am being purposeful now. With my silence. With my time. With my faith. Months ago, before she finally let go entirely, Claire asked me, "Do you believe we'll ever be able to get back?" At the time I just stared at her without responding. But I would respond as follows if she asked me now. That man with whom you were married. He is no longer there. Without a single question, you slapped him, and he died instantly. The man standing here today is no longer a part of your tale. He composed a fresh one. People believe that the end is survival. However, survival is only the first step, Because you begin to wonder what you would become if you stopped trying to be accepted and started being authentic after you understand you can survive being erased. Loyal to your own self-worth, voice, and identity. I no longer live for approval. The version of myself that I nearly lost, the one who picked up the pieces in the dark and figured out how to mold them into something new, is the one I live for. I go by Elias Ford. I was accused, assaulted, erased, and left behind. I didn't remain buried, though. I returned to determine who I wanted to be without anyone else's approval, not to prove a point or exact retribution. And this time, I totally, boldly, and unapologetically answered to my own name. Maybe you have some new questions now that you've heard the story today. Or perhaps some old recollections have been evoked. We are all connected by the new stories that are created on Reddit every day by new experiences and moments. Everybody has a different life path, and we all attempt to comprehend the world in our own manner. Moments like these serve as a reminder that we are all human, happy, sad, and constantly learning new things. Please feel free to tell your friends about this story if you liked it. We constantly value your opinions and suggestions since they inspire us to produce even better material. Every tale has a different viewpoint, and we want to make sure that our material is relatable and diverse by understanding everyone's viewpoints. These kinds of stories teach us that everyone's journey through life is unique and that we may learn new things from hearing other people's stories. You can also tell us your own tales. We also value the experiences you have. Please share your thoughts if you like this video. Our goal is to consistently produce content that inspires you and provides you with fresh concepts. Your comments are still valued even if you have already watched this video. We can enhance our content and give our audience a fresh viewpoint with each piece of input. What we witnessed today was only a small portion of the numerous tales that were posted globally and on Reddit. It serves as a reminder of how we all attempt to make sense of life by talking to one another about our experiences. This film only served as an illustration of how we attempt to learn about various facets of life and establish connections with others through storytelling. We intend to keep sharing tales like this that foster mutual learning and development.